Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Binome Manufacturer Elite Endurance Cup 2021 Season 6. We are here at Interlagos for the second round of the quarter-final. We're here with Lobby C, and I'm your host, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on, and I'll be bringing you the English-spoken broadcast of tonight's Lobby C, as our drivers are only 14 minutes, if not less, away from getting underway with the 2-hour endurance race, which will be critical in terms of them getting as many points on the board and making it to the semi-final. Now, of course, with it being a new week, we have a whole new roster of drivers within Lobby C. The roster has been turned upside down, what with the results of round number 1 last week at Catalonia, and with the dust settling from Catalonia and heading over to the Interlagos circuit, we need to introduce all of our drivers once again. Some of them you will have seen before, some of them will be new to you. But if you just give us 2 seconds to inform everyone that this broadcast is now live in the lobby, and then we'll get underway. But I hope you're all doing very well and that you're having a good start to your week. I'm indeed myself, but I hope that everybody is in good spirits as we get another week underway and we head closer and closer towards the summer. So without further ado then, let's start introducing our drivers and also talk a little bit about the track. So, we begin then in the order of our drivers as they are expected to line up on the grid tonight, unless I've been misinformed, and that means we will be starting off with one creepy crawly Spider, who I believe is somewhere at trackside right now, or may not be, but he'll be racing as part of the R8G team Spider when he does arrive at the circuit. He's not currently here, as we say hello to Sweet Lerb in the Twitch chat, and we hope you're doing well, Lerb, as always. We're then going to come over to our second place driver in taking part tonight, and that'll be lined up second on the grid, and that is IGTSH's Kende, who tonight is bringing the Aston Martin V12 Advantage GT3 2012 machine. It is the GT3 machine as he makes his way up towards turn number 6 on another final warm-up lap here, representing the international GT Sport Hungary community, also known as the independent GT Sport Hungary community, depending on how you interpret the eye. But Kende, a very well-respected driver, and we look forward to seeing what he's able to achieve in the rather potent British machine. The Aston Martin, of course, being known for its very strong acceleration, albeit its straight line top speed has been reduced in the most recent balance performance updates, but that Aston Martin does have a huge amount of kick down the straights with its V12 6-litre engine, and we're looking forward to seeing what Kende is able to achieve with it. Now, I do believe that Spider is still waiting to come out of the paddock and into his slot in the pit and eventually out onto the circuit, so we will come back to him in due course. But our third place man who will be lined up on the grid tonight is none other than GTS-BOCA's Kimi6599, currently parked in the pit representing Jaguar with the F-Type, of course, the beautiful British machine, which I personally love. It's my favourite car, but of course, not putting favourites aside and focusing on the here and now and the racers. Well, Kimi representing the BOCA community and representing Jaguar, and the French driver, a very well respected driver amongst the French racing community and indeed the whole European community. And Kimi also racing a number of other series at the same time at this point in time, and we look forward to seeing what he will be able to achieve for the British manufacturer here. Now, moving up beyond him and down to what will be a P4 on the grid tonight is one Monsieur Jordan, the Frenchman here representing a Corvette, driving in the Corvette C7 from the KCF community, and the Frenchman looking to potentially start on the medium tyre tonight. Perhaps not feeling that he's going to have the best form at the start of the race, but as he'll be lined up fourth on the grid, we look forward to seeing what the Corvette's able to do. We saw our Corvette drivers last time out at Catalonia really come into life during the course of the race after the opening stints, and we do wonder whether our Corvette drivers here in the form of Jordan will be able to spring a surprise as well. Last time out was T23T's Philippe Coe, who was racing in the Corvette along with his T23T colleague, but tonight they're in a different lobby and instead we'll be looking at Jordan from KCF. Fifth place on the grid will go to a driver that many of you will be familiar with, and that is RP Motorsports S43, the legend in the Ford GT, who last time out was on course for a P2 at Catalonia in round 1 of the quarter-final, until he made that rather major error at turn 9 right at the midway of the race at Catalonia, which saw him go into the wall and then have to recover the car all the way back up to what was P4 in the end. So S43 will be looking to bounce back tonight representing Ford, and that Ford GT will be quite strong here at Interlagos, particularly in the final sector, where it'll be able to absolutely abuse that very strong V8 engine and pound its way all the way down towards turn 1. Also, it's got the run from turn 3 to turn 4 known as Repro Posta, where it could be quite strong as well. We then move on to our P6 driver tonight, GADM, who I believe is still waiting to arrive at circuit, so we won't be able to introduce them right now. But then we do have V3R Jester, who's just arrived in the lobby, and we are expecting him to get out into the paddock, if not out into circuit, in a very short period of time. But whilst we are waiting, as more and more drivers are coming, and there's JDM being confirmed from the Storm community, we expect JDM to be with us any moment soon. We then hop over to our P8 driver, as we'll be starting on the grid tonight, and that is KCF's Karma, the Frenchman here, alongside Jordan from KCF representing Corvette. And the Corvette, something we haven't talked about, the Corvette being one of those cars that does come alive in the race, and it's got a good mixture of characteristics, and it's quite a strong fuel saver when you know where to upshift with it. And we're going to be seeing these guys short shift the life out of that Corvette's V8 engine, because that is where all the fuel saving and the engine efficiency comes. Can be a little bit erroneous on its front tyres, particularly through the low to medium speed corners under braking, where it can get some understeer, and indeed we see that at turn 9 with Karma almost going offline there, but we look forward to seeing what he is able to achieve, as we can see that we do have a little bit of a naughty bot in the Twitch chat, and we're just going to have to politely remove them from the Twitch chat for the time being. So they're gone, we don't have to worry about that anymore. And as we continue to go through our drivers here, what with Karma being our P8 driver, we then come to JB Sub, the GTWGP, or you say that in a mouthful, the Frenchman here making his way up towards turn 10 and also representing Corvette. And indeed, JB Sub, a little bit of an unknown in my personal opinion, we haven't seen too much of him, but given the fact he's raced as part of the GTWGP community, a very strong set of drivers, and I'm sure JB Sub is one of the strongest within that community as he makes his way to turn 12 right now and bring in that Corvette. Then we're going to hop down to our P10 driver, who is IGTSH's Adam, but I believe that actually in reality it is going to be instead Adam substituted out for Padji, and we're going to be referring to him as Padge from this point onwards. The Hungarian driver also representing Aston Martin, much like his teammate Kende, who will be in P2, but Padge will be all the way down in P10 tonight, and as we said about the Aston Martin earlier, it will be very strong off the line, and we expect him to make good gains once the rolling start procedure does get underway. It'll then be over to a V3R Mostro, I should say, rather than Monstro. Get my names a little bit mixed up there, who at the moment is not quite out onto the circuit. We are waiting for him to potentially arrive, but that will be the driver who lines up in P11, and then it will be Sully from GTWGP who will be lining up at the back of the grid tonight in the Corvette, the other GTWGP driver. Representing that community, indeed, the American manufacturer, and the French one will be looking to get a good result tonight to make up for lost ground in round number 1. Now we do have some more drivers who are currently making their way out onto track, and let's introduce V3R's Jester, the Toyota driver here, driving the GR Supra Racing concept, although lagging quite heavily, it should be said, this connection being quite disturbingly laggy. I think Jester will need to get that stabilised in short order, as we just look around to make sure it's only Jester where we're seeing those issues so far, and indeed Jester does seem to be ricocheting around the track like a pinball, but Jester who will be qualifying in P7 for the purposes of this race, and starting on the 4th row of the rolling start procedure. And I believe his internet connectivity is calming down a little bit now. The Supra being an all-rounder, and whilst it does have the poor launch of a standing start, that will not be an issue here, but it does have quite strong overall characteristics and is a very stable car, even with worn tyres. So it'll be a car that will really excel as we go deeper and deeper into each stint. Other drivers who we've yet to introduce, of course, as we look around right now. Well, we have Mostro, who is the other, not other Corvette driver, my apologies, too many Corvettes for my tongue. We've got the other Toyota driver here of Mostro, also representing the V3R community, and we look forward to seeing what the V3R guys are able to do. What if Mostro lining up P11 on the grid? Now we do have Spider, who we're still waiting to get his car out on circuit, so we're not too far away. 5 minutes to go until we get underway with the race tonight. And we look forward to seeing what we are able to get underway with in a very short order. But as for the track, we're going to ride on board with Padge right now to give you a quick run around the circuit. So charging down towards turn number 1, making his way up towards the braking point, braking at about the 50 board there, which you saw on the top right as he broke in, and coming all the way down to second gear, going a little bit deep there, but getting it nicely nailed for the switch back into turn 2 through the centre S, and then absolutely powering it through, planting it on the curb for turn number 3, and charging around, and you can see the Aston Martin here going up through the gears very quickly as he makes his way down the Reproposta towards turn number 4, braking at about that 100 metre board, in fact braking at about 90 metres there, and going a little bit wide of the apex curve, but you can imagine on a stronger, grippier compound, i.e. the racing soft or the racing medium, he would have made that apex comfortably, but still a good amount of braking through turn 5 and up the hill into turn 6 and 7 now. The double whammy right-hander here, 2 apexes where you want to be as tight as possible to both apexes, but perhaps not that tight, because then you lose a little bit of momentum and the overall turning angle for turn 7, but he nails it into turn 8 and now through 9, the very tricky left-hander here, where you have to be so patient on getting on the power until you can see the exit curb there, and now coming up into turn 10, braking hard for one of the slowest corners at the circuit, if not the slowest corner at Interlagos, and now stamping it on the throttle through the left-hander of turn 11, and you'll see he's going to try and hook it up on the apex curb here to get the car to rotate through without being launched off the curb. Now into turn 12, Juncao, the last corner before we've got the long run to the start-finish line, and now it's a long charge all the way up the hill here. You're going to delay his upshifts as much as possible, is Padge. The reason being you want to get the maximum possible momentum up the hill, and in race conditions we'll see some drivers really lose out when they try and fuel save there, and now coming to the start finish line to complete the lap. We say thank you to IGTSH's Padge for taking us around, as we've only got 2.5 minutes to go until we get underway with the race, and that gives us the opportunity to look around the field once again, and we can now reintroduce I should say, JDM from the Storm community, bringing the Ford GT once again after what was a difficult round number 1 at Catalonia. He'll be looking to make up for what was a struggle at times, particularly in the opening stints where he just wasn't able to make the ground compared to his teammate IS-43. We could also introduce our pole sitter for tonight, and that is R8G's Spider, who is bringing the Jaguar F-Type. Representing the R8G community is the Frenchman, and Spider being a very strong competitor within the FIA community. If you've seen top split lobbies in EMEA, it's typically Spider who's one of the drivers in there for the manufacturer series, and we will definitely see some sparks fly with Spider being on pole, and look forward to seeing what he's able to achieve in the Jaguar. Now, we haven't talked about the Jaguar too much, so just to give you a quick overview, the Jaguar is much like the Corvette in some respects, in the fact they're both front engine rear wheel drive machines. They've both got very strong V8s, albeit the Corvette does not have a supercharger, whereas the Jaguar F-Type does, and that supercharger just changes the characteristics a little bit of the engine performance, whereby the Jaguar does not quite have the fuel efficiency that's possible or available to the Corvette, but what it does have is a very consistent engine RPM band, which means that if you're going to fuel save, particularly in the low speed sectors, what you can do is upshift very early in the gear range, and that gives you the opportunity to do a lot of fuel saving. The only downside of the F-Type is that it can be prone to getting a little bit loose with some tyre wear on the rear tyres, but you can tune that out with moving the brake bias towards the front, but then you invoke a significant amount of understeer. But the Jaguar, a very well respected car within the GT3 category and GT Sport, all of these cars of course being in that GT3 category, as we regularly feature in the Binome series. I believe that is everybody introduced as far as we know, as we're just taking a look back through our briefing to see if we have got any other things to report before we get underway in a minute's time. Now, the time is counting down in rapid order here, and we are getting ready to go for some good old-fashioned racing. 2 hours is the mission around this circuit. We've got the tyre wear and fuel on, and we're expecting a good number of pit stops. And one observation we did have last time out from Catalonia was a lot of drivers decided to bank on doing only 1 lap on the medium and the hard. Remember folks, our drivers will have to run at least 1 lap on the medium and 1 lap on the hard. The pit time loss here for a tyre change alone is 25 seconds, and we would suspect that some drivers will opt to go for that strategy once again in terms of only doing 1 lap on each of those tyres, whereas other drivers may decide, you know what, they're going to do a full stint or at least a marginal stint on those tyres to mitigate the offset in terms of pit time loss that you'd have to make up for if you're running the racing soft as much as possible. But we are about to get underway. Our host tonight is GTS-BOCA's Tosh, who is bringing the French language broadcast for this lobby. I'm bringing the English one, and now let's settle down for 2 hours of racing. The timer counts down, and it's good luck to all of our drivers as it is time for go, go, go. So as we pan down to the rolling start grid, then we can see on pole is R8G's Spider, followed by Kimi, as called out earlier, Kende in P3, and KFC Jordan in KCF, I should say, not KFC, Jordan in P4. But what can the four GTs do from further back? What the fact we've got both Motorsports, S43, and JDM starting 5th and 6th. So as we get the rolling start procedure underway, all of our drivers have only got a short run down towards turn 1 compared to the standard run from all the way out the last corner. It's going to be a case of who can get on the throttle as quickly as possible here. And we're out to the countdown. 3, 2, 1. And it's lights out and away we go for 2-hour endurance at Interlagos. And Spider immediately getting on the hammer and making his way down. They all charge down towards turn number 1. I don't think we're going to be seeing too many major moves as they charge into turn 1. Some of the drivers getting a little bit of heat in their tyres as Jester lagging a little bit there, and Karma immediately having to get on the brakes to be conservative, not to bump into the back of the V3R driver. But we can see that as Jester's making his way through at turn number 3, it is Karma and JDM who seem to be in a little bit of a difficult scenario here. JDM up into P6, still holding on to that position, and Karma in P7 right now as all of our leaders making their way through turn number 4. And as we look further back down the order here, we can see that S43 already closing up on what is the guy ahead of him, whereas Karma right now and JDM have traded positions through turn 4. And now we look further back and we can see that Mostro in P9 right now, and he's got to fend off a good number of drivers behind who are putting a lot of pressure on. I think the two Toyota drivers are starting to run a little bit off the pace early on and deciding to do some teamwork in terms of fuel saving, as we see the GTWGP guys running behind them, and well, JV Sub and also Sully both getting caught up in this little traffic jam as they all make their way up into turn 10, and nobody going for a daring move on the inside on lap number 1. But meanwhile, Spider coming up towards the end of turn 12 then, and now making his way on the long charge down to the start-finish line. And we can see that Kimi behind the following Jaguar driver, keeping well inside his slipstream, as we see Kende in the Aston Martin having broken away from S43, who's made the move on Jordan, it should be pointed out. That was made through turn 11 into 12 by looks of things. And as they all come across the line then after lap number 1, it is Spider ahead of Kimi, followed by Kende. Our top 3 breaking away with a 2-second gap to S43 and P4. Jordan battling with S43 into turn 1, but not able to get the overlap. The KCF driver putting pressure on the Ford driver as they make their way through the center S. Karma in P6 right now, the second KCF driver trying to close up a little bit to his teammate, and it is Mostro in P7 really marking the split in terms of our order right now. Mostro holding up the rest of the pack, it would seem, as JDM, the Ford GT driver, up into P8, having got past. Well, hold on a second, we seem to be missing some. Jester has dropped down the order a bit, and Padge is into the pits after doing 1 lap on those racing hard tyres in the Aston Martin and going to the racing soft. So that's why Padge has dropped down the order so rapidly, having pitted early on in the race. But meanwhile, up front, we can see that Spider with quite a bit of pressure right now from Kimi, and it is a case, I think, that in Kende's situation, as we ride on board with the Hungarian driver here, chasing after the 2 Jaguars. What does Kende do in this scenario, you're probably wondering? Does he try and go for a move early on, or does he simply sit behind? Well, the Aston Martin can be quite aggressive on its fuel usage by comparison with the Jaguars, even with short shifts, and I think Kende will be using this opportunity just to use the slipstream of the 2 Jaguars ahead of him to pull him along as they make their way into turn 12, and you can see they're all following very similar lines right now, just simply trying to keep with one another. And it's in the uphill section here. Watch how that timing line comes down. It was open up to almost half a second, but now it's starting to close up as the slipstream plays into effect, and also the V12 engine at Aston Martin just gives it a little bit more grunt going up the hill compared to the V8 of the Jaguar, as they all come onto lap number 3. Our top 3 right now, all in line astern fashion, making their way into the first corner. No changes there, and they're literally nose to tail here as we look further back, and we can see that S43 not able to completely break away from Jordan. Jordan only 1.4 seconds behind, and it looks as though the Ford GT driver right now in a bit of a no man's land where he's got to try and get the foot down in order to catch up to our top 3, who could be changing position in the near future, particularly if they start fighting with one another. But we will, of course, wait to see as we say hello to Circa 91 in chat and then look back to our broadcast right now, and we can see that Jordan is not closing up too rapidly. He's losing. In fact, Jordan in a battle with his teammate, and I think Jordan has backed out of it there. What has happened? Well, they're side by side, go up into turn 6, but Karma has got through. Let's wind back and see where there was a mistake from Jordan. So as they made their way down the Reproposta towards turn number 4 then on the third lap, I think what you're going to see here is Jordan is going to go deep because he lost a lot of momentum out the corner. He did indeed go deep, and Karma came alongside, and I think Jordan must have been on the radio with Karma to say, well, do you want me to let you through, or are we just going to simply battle this one? And he's let him through as a result, and Karma now up into P5, and that gap to S43 has opened up by half a second as a result of that little mistake from Jordan, who has dropped back to 1 second off his teammate right now. But the good news for them, of course, is they've got a window of 3.2 seconds to Mostro, the V3R driver, who has broken clear of Storm's JDM. JDM not able to catch back up to the Supra right now, but I get the feeling that JDM may be on an offset strategy versus the Supra driver, as the driver who did pit right at the start, it should be pointed out, Padge right now making his way through turn 10, and he switched from the hards to the softs, remember, so he's already got that mandatory hard tyre stint out the way. As meanwhile up front we can see our top three still running nose to tail, no change between them, and they're simply trying to sap the life out of one another in terms of fuel and managing those tyres. I think it'll be a case of these guys, if we're going to see a move, it'll be right towards the end of the stint, otherwise they're going to work together as much as possible, as we see Kimi take a little look towards the inside of Spider and actually drifting under braking there and having to make sure he didn't clip the back of the lead Jaguar driver as they all make their way up the hill towards turn 4. But perhaps this is a sign that Kimi is starting to feel a little bit more competitive versus Spider at this point in the race, and he might try and go for the position switch in the near future as they're making their way up into turn 8 once again. As we look further back right now, and we can see that the field has opened up in our mid-pack a little bit, and in fact it has opened up quite a bit for a good number of our drivers. We should look back to Sully, who is in P9 right now, having got past JB Sub a little bit earlier on, and Sully, the lead of the GTWGP drivers right now in the Corvette, of course, as they make their way into turn 9. And we can see that JB Sub isn't too far back, but I think these guys just running close enough to one another to work it out in terms of teamwork and fuel saving if needs be, as JDM goes a bit deep into turn 10, and that Ford GT just being a little bit heavy on the brakes right now, and I think JDM's just got to be wary of the fact if he keeps making little errors like that, that gap of what was 1.1 seconds going into the corner, now just a second, will close up, and it'll be the case that Sully will be in that slipstream, and that Corvette will fly when it's in the tow of another car. As we can see, our leaders all coming down into turn 1 once again, and no change still. They're definitely trying to work this one out and work it together, and I think it's the case for Kimi and Kende. They're just waiting for that opportunity to strike. As we do look further down our order once more, and we can see that Mostro right now gradually closing up to Jordan just at a very small rate of knots, and he's just keeping his teammate honest here, I think, and also making sure he's there for Jordan, so that way if Jordan does need some fuel saving, he can potentially lift off and tuck in behind his teammate. And that's something you can do as drivers here. What the amount of time we do have available in the race, it can be quite pivotal if you've got a teammate who's close to you on circuit to use them to work together. But one such driver who's not afforded that luxury and is in fact dropping back as he goes wide out of turn 4 is JDM, and Sully is getting ever closer as we look back from the Storm driver right now. The Ford GT just not seeming to offer him the grip through the medium speed apexes by comparison with Sully's Corvette right now, and I think this is one of the weaknesses that we did see at Catalonia with regards to the Ford GT. It's very tricky on its tyres with the mid-engine rear-wheel drive drivetrain, and the fact you've got so much weight. This is a GT1 car that's been respec'd for GT3, and to do that I've had to put in a lot of weight on this car, and that means all the weight at the rear is sliding forward under braking, and when you get on the power, it's all the power being delivered to the rear wheels, as we see a little bit of snap oversteer there getting on the power out of turn 10. But right now Sully only able to look on and be in that position to potentially strike should JDM make a mistake, but of course this will be on JDM's mind as he makes his way up the hill to complete lap number 5. And we can see coming out of turn 12 out of Junkao just how strong Sully is in that Corvette, and I think Sully's going to be on for a move here as they make their way over towards the timing line right now to go on to lap number 6. Are we going to see a change of position? And it looks as though JDM is not going to fight it as Sully goes up the inside and into the braking zone they go. Sully on the inside, JDM on the outside, and Sully makes the move stick for the time being. And I think the Ford GT driver recognises the fact that right now he's not in the place to fight for that position back, and it's too early on to fight for it. He may as well conserve the stint and keep on racing behind as they continue to make their way onto lap number 6 then. And we can see our leaders up front, none of the top 3 really breaking away or starting to pull away right now. And the big question you'll probably be wondering at this point, well, when do they decide to make the break? Well, to be honest, this early on and 8.5 minutes into the race isn't the time to make the break, because you've got to manage yourself over the course of these races. But I reckon as we see Spider just opening a tiny bit of a gap out of turn 9 there, it's only to 4 attempts, but it's reeling back in, and once Kimi gets back on that throttle, I think Spider will try to just eke out a little bit towards the end of each stint. That's what he seems to be doing right now, as Kimi has lost a little bit of time to the lead Jaguar driver. And then when it comes out the pits, it'll reset, and it'll be a case that Spider will just gradually try to make those marginal gains towards the end of each stint where he can. Of course, he won't want to overdrive the car. But we do see right now our P4 driver of S43 from RP Motorsport just making his way up towards the start-finish line once again. The long run down towards turn number 1, of course. And S43 running a good stint so far, albeit 7.2 seconds off our leaders. And they are pulling away because of the slipstream available to them, in the case of Kimi and Kende. But that gap is going to stay relatively the same. Of course, the Ford GT having that straight line speed advantage, and indeed a lot of engine power coming out the corners, but he does have to be wary of the fact that Karma is very gradually catching up to him right now, and I think it will be the case that Karma will be closer over the next couple of laps because the Ford GT just does not have the stint management capabilities that the Corvette does. But of course it comes down to the driver as well, and we do know that S43 is very good at managing the Ford GT so long as he doesn't get too much pressure on himself and potentially make a small mistake. As we see that up front right now, we have not had a change of position, but we can see that once again Kimi is closing up to the back of Spider in this medium speed section into low speed corners now through the mid sector here, and this is where it would seem that Kimi is a little bit stronger than Spider through the opening half of sector 2, but it's the second half of sector 2, particularly turn 10, where Kimi just falls back a little bit, but that could be lifting off to save some fuel with the slipstream of Spider and to make sure he doesn't whack the back of his opponent, of course. But meanwhile, that battle for P6 is starting to intensify a little bit as we see Mostro right now. In fact, Mostro has got ahead of Jordan, it should be pointed out. We didn't quite catch that on camera, but Jordan has fallen back to P7 and Mostro up into P6. We're hearing word from trackside that occurred at turn 4, and it was a case that Mostro just found his way up the inside of Jordan, and Jordan backing off of it. So right now, Karma not able to have the support of his teammate. The KCF lead driver will not have his support driver racing with him, as we see that Mostro is on a charge right now in the Supra. And remember what we said earlier on with regards to the Supra, it's a very balanced overall car in terms of racing capabilities, and Mostro is definitely showing that for the Japanese manufacturer right now. But as we make our way onto lap number 8, Jordan looks to the inside versus Mostro, but doesn't quite have the overlap. But you can see what Jordan is trying to do. He's trying to say to Mostro, okay, you got your move done, fair enough, but remember, I'm still here and I'm right behind you. And this is where the Corvette shines. It really can put pressure on other cars because it's got that engine capability. That V8 just works so well. It's able to take the fight to Mostro. In fact, going into turn 4 again, Jordan just coming slightly off racing line, not too much to go for a move, but not enough to stay on the racing line, of course. And what it means is effectively that Jordan's just trying to put pressure on Mostro, and they're getting ever closer, and Jordan is putting a lot of pressure on his fellow countryman as the Toyota driver gets it a little bit deep through turn 6 and 7, but then regains it, and Jordan is falling back for now. But you can see that KCF Jordan is really putting some pressure onto the guy ahead of him right now, as Mostro will need to try and calm it down and try and control the pace of this battle for P6. Of course, he won't want to lose too much time, but that positional advantage going into the pits could be pivotal. Now, in terms of pit stops, as we look forward to our lead drivers once again and we look at the telemetry, we can see that the gentlemen up front all started on the racing softs, and they're all on roughly the same amount of fuel, as Kimi is getting ever closer to the back of Spider, albeit Kimi's done a little bit more fuel saving, as would be expected, because he's had the tow of Spider all the way through this opening stint. But all three of our top drivers, although Kende has used a little bit more tyre by comparison with the other two, a bit more graining on that front right, as would be expected perhaps with the Aston Martin V12, with the fact it does lug itself around the circuit quite a bit by comparison with the Jaguar in terms of being heavy on the brakes. We then look back, all of our top three starting on the racing softs. Karma starting on the racing medium. We did notice that when he rolled the car out of the pits to come onto the rolling start procedure that he started on the mediums, and Karma right now in a really good spot running on those racing mediums, keeping them relatively clean as well, though he's used up a lot of fuel by comparison with our leaders in that Corvette, and perhaps not getting the most out of the fuel saving capabilities of the car as he makes his way up towards turn 6 once again. Jordan in a similar situation and used a tiny bit more fuel, as we see. I believe we have had a pit stop for somebody here. We have indeed, and Mostro into the pits and now coming out of the pits, so he decided to come off of his current tyres, which I believe at the time was a set of racing softs, and now he's gone to the medium tyre to get it out of the way. He's not put any fuel in the car, so whilst we're checking the telemetry, we missed out with Mostro coming into the pits, but he's coming to the pits. He's starting out once again right at the back of the field, of course, as would be expected, and Jordan having been released up into P5 right now on those mediums. Sully, meanwhile, in P6 on the racing hards, and that would explain why Sully dropped off a bit earlier on. And what about JDM? What's the Ford GT driver got? He's also got the racing hards, and these are the guys who are choosing to run those longer mandatory compound stints. And then we have GTWGP JB Sub racing hards as well, and on similar fuel situations to guys ahead. And then it really comes to Padge right now, who, remember, started off on those racing hards right at the start, did one lap in the Aston Martin, and then went immediately to the softs. And look how he is now starting to build up time on the rest of the field. But of course, he's got to push hard with these tyres, but at the same time manage them well, because remember the fact that he's got to make up the effective distance of an additional pit stop, because he only took one lap on those racing hards. But into the pits come both Karma and also Jordan. We've also got Jester coming into the pits right now off of the racing hard. So this is our opening set of pit stops really kicking off, as we can see up front, BOCA, GTS-BOCA's Kimi and Spider not really separating one another still, but Kende starting to fall back a little bit from the two Jaguar drivers here, and I think the Aston Martin's tyre wear is just starting to dig into Kende as the Hungarian driver makes his way into turn 10, and you can definitely see on the brakes into turn 10 he's just having to work the car a little bit harder, and he's almost at risk of falling out the slipstream of the two guys up front as he goes wide out of turn 11 there, and I think that's going to cost Kende the time he needs as he falls out of the slipstream of the two drivers ahead of him, and will now need to either pit or work hard to close it up. This might be the opportunity for Kende to go for an undercut strategy, as we can see that Sully in P4 right now really starting to hit the cliff in terms of tyre life by comparison with JDM's from Storm. The Ford GT driver catching up to Sully at a sensational rate of knots, and as we look back from these two, we can see that Sully really being pressured right now, but not making any mistakes, mind you, although he has gone a little bit wide out of turn 11, although JDM I think upshifted early to rotate the car off Apex a lot earlier than perhaps planned, to avoid getting that understeer onto the exit curb, because if you hit the AstroTurf beyond the exit curb at turn 11, I can tell you now from my experience, folks, you've either got to catch the car immediately or say goodbye to your race, and you'll just go flying off into the distance. But as they all come down here, we see that JDM is into the pits, so JDM has decided to come off of those hard tyres at the midpoint of his fuel tank, and Sully stays out there, and Padge now all the way out to P5 with the racing softs as he goes deep, and he's gone wide into turn 1, a little bit on the grass there, just literally using a bit too much width on the circuit, and he rejoins and has to try and get out of the way of the drivers, although he's just rejoined in front of S43. Not costing S43 time in terms of an instant, but S43 has got a lot of momentum, which he's going to try and use to get past the Aston Martin driver as they drag race their way down towards turn number 4 here. It was a little bit of an unsafe rejoin, but they've made it work, and S43 is up into P6. What a disaster for the Aston Martin driver, who was running very well until we literally started talking about him, and you could say it's the commentator's curse, ladies and gentlemen. But Padge immediately coming back versus S43, but in the drag race up to turn 6 and 7, can he squeeze himself on the inside into turn 7? Not quite. Will he go for a move on the brakes into turn 8? Not quite either. So S43 has got this position gained and done. And remember, S43's on those racing hard tyres right now. So every second that Padge spends behind the Ford GT driver is going to absolutely damage his race 100%. Padge will not have wanted this. He wouldn't have wanted the mistake, of course, but to be behind a driver who's on racing hards right now, because remember, the racing soft, even when it's heavily worn, is still technically stronger per lap versus the racing hard when it's fresh. It means that S43 is now a traffic jam to Padge. So Padge has got to do one or two things: either use additional fuel saving, alternatively use some extra fuel to get the move done. But that Ford GT is so strong in these straights alongside the Aston Martin as they charge up the hill. Padge into the pits of the racing soft, so he's opted to come in early and get off of those tyres instead of trying to fight it out, as we see that Kende has dropped to the battle for the lead right now, and the two Jaguar drivers are literally nose to tail still, and Kende 1.5 seconds down the road. As we look further around the circuit, we see Sully up into P4 right now. Of course, this is track position, but not in terms of the overall strategy stakes, as JB Sub in P5 is being gradually closed down by S43. The Ford GT driver has the Corvette in his sights, and I think he's going to be within striking distance by the end of this lap. Where JB Sub right now being on the racing hard tyre, having opted to start on this tyre, and we can see behind him the racing hards of S43 in a much fresher state, and he is looking very competitive as S43. Now, in terms of fuel tanks, we've seen the number of drivers pit on lap number 10, 11 and 12, or more towards lap number 10 and 11, and at half tank there. So we're expecting full refuels, or at least refuels for a stint, around lap number 20 to 23, depending on what our drivers do in fuel saving mode. Of course, our leaders, having dictated the pace quite a bit and are using one another to fuel save, we could expect them to go a little bit longer, perhaps even creep it out to say a 24th or a 25th lap on a full tank of fuel. But of course, once they got through that full tank, I think a lot of drivers will want to run their cars as light as possible and only refuel for each stint. As we see S43 makes a move up the inside on JB Sub into turn 12, and that was a very, very smart move there for S43. I do not think JB Sub expected the move, and at the last minute S43 just put himself in position to get inside JB Sub, and Sub reacted accordingly by giving him the space. But we can see that Karma now, the Chevrolet driver for KCF, trying to attack on the inside into turn 1, and all three drivers coming up here. It's almost 3 wide, and Karma backs out trying to go for the move on S43, but he's got it done on JB Sub, who decides to back out of throwing up a defence here. I think Sub realises right now, being on that racing hard tyre, he just needs to make it go long and last for as long as possible rather than fighting anything fierce right now. But let's take a look back at that overtake as made by S43, although we'll come back to that actually in a second, because Karma right now getting ever closer to the back of S43. And if he's going to make a move, I'm wondering where it's going to up into 6. No, he's too far back, so let's take a look back at that move by the Ford GT driver. So as we ride on board then, what you're going to see here is he's got the almost alongside on JB Sub, but Sub stays at racing line, and then S43 just tucking it in at the last possible moment under braking. Very cleanly done by S43 there, and a very nice move to boot. As we see Kende from our race leaders are now coming into the pits. So the gap was 2.3 seconds when he came into the pits, and our race leaders are soldiering on their racing soft tyres, and you can see that in both Spider and also Kimi's case, both of them on similar tyre wear, but Kimi of course with that slight fuel advantage, what the fact he's had so much of Spider's slipstream for so long. But they've been working in harmony together right now, and where is Kende going to come out? That is the big question. And what tyre will he go to? And if he's going to be using a similar strategy to Padge, his teammate of course from the international and independent GT Sport Hungary community, we do imagine, well, Kende is coming back out of the pits, and it is a set of soft tyres he's gone for, so he's going for a double soft stint, and what that means is he'll be going full aggression here. But let's see where this brings him out in relation to everyone. I think he is going to be clear of Sully, who's just going through the centre S's right now, as Kende makes his way out of the pits and is onto another set of softs. So Sully in P4, and he's got S43 trying to chase after him, but S43 has got a face full of Karma coming after him right now, and I do not mean the proverbial Karma, I mean Karma the KCF driver, as the Chevrolet driver is 6 tenths down right now and is trying to catch up to the Ford GT driver. And let's just take a look at what tyres Karma is on. Is he on the racing hards? Yep, he is as well. So these two drivers are even in terms of tyres. So Karma being in this position right now is in a good place to put pressure on the Ford GT driver because they're on equal compound. But we see behind JB Sub, the GWGP driver, GTWGP driver I should say, that is a mouthful to say every time. JB Sub under a lot of pressure from Mostro right now, and as they go into turn 8, Mostro looks to the inside, but he can't quite get alongside as our race leaders go around for a 15th lap on their racing softs, we hear from trackside right now. But this battle for P7 really heating up, and the Supra driver putting all mother sorts of pressure on the Chevrolet driver, as we can see that Mostro is in such a comfortable place. But then again, that's because he's on racing mediums, whereas I believe JB Sub is on hards, and that means Mostro's got a huge grip advantage as they come down towards turn 12, and Mostro with a cut back into 11 gets it done under braking into 12, but he's run a little bit wide, but I don't think that's going to cost him too much of a run. But will JB Sub try and come back as we ride on board here with the Chevrolet driver charging up the straight now down towards turn number 1 once again. And I think as Sully comes into the pits on what was at the time P3, no, sorry, P4, as they make their way down towards turn 1. Will JB Sub go for a move? No, he decides better of it. And we can see that Sub being on those racing hard tyres versus Mostro right now, who we look back from, who is on those racing mediums. Mostro needed to get that move done because he was losing time behind JB Sub and losing the advantage of that racing medium compound. But still, as Sully is in the pits, we can see that our race leaders are still going around. They're coming in towards turn 12 and they're coming through the corner right now. And will they come into the pits this time? Because surely now they've got to come into the pits soon, as we see the fastest lap so far has been set by Padge from IGTSH in the Aston Martin V12 with a 1:30.1, and our race leaders by comparison are running 1:32.1, so they are effectively 2 seconds off of the optimal pace right now, but they're still going around there. This is the 16th lap. They feel very comfortable in those Jaguars right now as they're making their way through the Senna S for the 16th time of asking, and Kende 30.7 seconds behind. Of course, in Kende's position right now, you want to be absolutely hammering it because you need to close out that gap to the leaders who are trying to go as long as possible and limit the number of pit stops they make. They've got some superb long-term strategy lined up, or could it be a disaster if Kende plays his cards right? Now, talking about Kende, let's also talk a little bit about his teammate, and we can see that Padge right now, after that instant having to go into the pits, is back into P12, and he has decided to go for that another set of racing softs. So he's decided to go hard, soft, soft, with only one lap on the hard, and Padge goes for the move on Sully into the inside on turn number 10, and Sully doesn't quite give him as much space as perhaps he'd like, but does back out in the end. Although I say that, then Sully's on the inside into turn 12, and Padge is still going to try and fight his way past Sully, and Sully, who's just to come out the pits, in fact, has held on. Sully has held on to the position for now, but surely Padge is going to have to run up the hill here to the start-finish line, to the timing line, as they make their way along the straight here. They are side by side, charging down towards turn number 1 right now, and ahead of them is KCF Jordan, I believe, who is at 1.3 seconds up the road, so that means Padge has got to chase after the Chevrolet driver, or another Chevrolet driver, after he's cleared Sully, and into turn 1 they go, and Sully backs out of it, I think, and Padge nails it on the braking on the inside into turn 1, and now Padge has got to go hunting once again. And let's just check, Sully being on those racing medium tyres, so Padge was losing time as our race leaders are into the pits, and it should be noted that Kimi has a 5 litre fuel advantage over Spider as they've both pitted right now. But in terms of close battles out on circuit, Kende, of course, coming out of the final corner right now, or the final corner we denote in terms of a corner where you have to brake, which is turn 12, and now charging up the hill here, round towards the start-finish line. And where will our race leaders come out in relation to Kende, who's had to work it hard here? Well, the fact he fell out the toe of the Jaguar drivers on the lap just before he came into the pits, where he's coming across our timing lines right now. And what about the 2 Jaguar drivers? He's into turn 1, and they're still not coming out the pits for it, but Kimi's coming out the pits, as is Spider, and Spider's gone for a bit extra fuel, and as they come through here, Kende is going to be clear of those pair, so it means that Kende, going for that earlier pit stop, has cleared the 2 Jaguar drivers, but of course they will come out behind him, and if they opt to run that longer stint once again, well, it could all play into their hands, or will it play into Kende's hands? We've got a long strategic battle underway between our top 3 right now, as we can see in P4 is S43, as Karma goes a little bit wide out of turn 3 there, but keeps it on the curb. Mini won't incur a track limits penalty, and S43 is gradually being hunted by KCF Karma, but I think the gap between these two is stabilising somewhat. The Corvette driver just not able to get one up on S43, the Ford driver, at this point in time, as we're on lap 17, and they're both making their way through turns 6 and 7 as we speak. As we look further down the order then, we can see that JB's up in P7 right now, in a lonely P7 for the time being, and it is the other Ford GT driver of JDM who is currently in P8, and again in a bit of a no man's land right now, and just having to run a solid race. As for other battles out of the circuit, well, we do have Jester, who is being hunted down right now by Padge. Jester being the second of our 2 Toyota drivers running around on the circuit, if I get it correctly. But in the battle for P11 right now, I think Jordan's only recently had a pit stop. Well, no, Jordan is due for a pit stop very soon, looking bingo on fuel. And Sully is all over the back of Jordan, keeping in mind that Sully right now had that fight with Padge only a couple of laps to go. Padge having cleared Jordan, and we see Jordan going a bit deep into turn 8, and they're side by side through 9 here, but Sully trying to find a way around the outside into 9, and he's holding it on the outside, and he makes the move. Sully with the brave move around the outside there into turn 9, and we're going to take a look back at that, because I think we've got a story to tell there, folks. You don't normally see this. So Sully, as he made his way through the corner here, you're just going to see he tries to hold on with so much grip, and in the end he's got the grip advantage, and Jordan just cannot get the throttle down because Sully is completely alongside. And what a fantastic move as JB Sub comes into the pits from what was at the time, I believe, P7. So as the Karma and also JB Sub both come into the pits and are both putting fuel in the car right now, Karma having the fuel being put into the machine as we speak, we can see that Kende leading up front right now, 6.3 seconds ahead of Kimi and Spider. Kimi and Spider both going to another set of softs, mind you, but it is Kende who is pulling away from them a little bit. But remember, the 2 Jaguar drivers are going much longer on their stints, it would seem, by comparison to the Aston Martin driver. So will it be the case that the longer stints prevail, or the shorter stints prevail? Well, we've got another hour and a half or so to find out. Now, elsewhere around the field, it's worth noting that Mostro has actually lost out versus S43 a little bit. He's lost the best part of half a second over the previous lap, over lap 17. So Mostro is pulling a little bit away from the Corvette driver chasing him right now. And I think S43 will be happy being in this position, given the fact that after the disaster of Catalonia, we had to make that huge recovery drive in the end to reclaim a good number of points. S43 will be comfortable here and feel no pressure on him by comparison with Catalonia. And this is what he needs right now. He needs a clear race and just needs to to get his head down and get on with it, and it will work out nicely for him. Mind you, Mostro coming into the pits on those racing mediums, and Mostro will find himself falling a little bit down the order. I think he's going to drop down to somewhere in the region of about P6 or P7, as we see that Storm's JDM making his way up towards the pit here, and I think he is actually going to come into the pits, JDM. So Mostro, I think, has cleared into P5 right now as JDM comes off of those racing mediums, as does Mostro, of course. And Padge charging through as Jester also comes into the pits from P7 at the time, being our second of our Toyota drivers, and it's all chop and change in terms of pit stops as they're all coming off of their mediums. And Padge right now must be thinking to himself, right, don't make the same mistake again into turn one. You're starting to clear some drivers, just go full attack and simply see what you can do, remembering you've got that medium stint later on in the race. But we can see that Kende, our race leader right now, coming up behind a little bit of traffic. KCF Jordan, he's coming up behind. Jordan being towards the end of a stint, I believe. He's on those racing hard tyres. He's got, well, no, he's just come out of the pits, I should clarify. He was on racing hard tyres, but has gone for a full refuel and gone to the racing softs. And I believe that means for Jordan, he has cleared both the racing hard and the racing medium and is now in the driving seat with those racing softs. As we see Jester and also JDM switch into a set of soft tyres. And Jester, well, he's coming out of the pits. Has Jester made a mistake here? Because it doesn't look like he's put any fuel in the car. And in fact, I believe Jester has made a horrific error in the pits. He's put no fuel in the car. So this is going to be a very short stint on the racing softs, as we see that he is lagging a little bit once again. And Jester will be pitted soon. And that is a disaster for the Supra driver. He must be absolutely bashing his head against his steering wheel right now. Because, well, he bashing his hands, not his head, because he'll need to look where he's going. Because that is an absolute disaster. He was looking good for a mid-finishing position, but that means he's going to have to double his workload now. But looking further around as we get to the 1 hour and 30 minutes remaining mark, so 30 minutes of this race is complete. S43 into the pits, and as he comes out, where is this going to place him? He is, of course, in a battle right now with who we believe is Karma, who is making his way down the start-finish straight, and it's a battle between the Ford GT driver and the Chevrolet C7 driver. And as S43 is still putting fuel in the car, will Karma have cleared him through that pit stop as Karma makes his way through the ZRS right now? And S43 is only coming out of the pits, so Karma is up into what is effectively P5 out on circuit right now. And I think S43 actually is going to drop behind Sully as they make their way out. And in fact, yes, S43 has dropped behind Sully as well, and he's down into P7, but he's now on those racing softs, and he's got Mostro coming up behind him. Has he cleared Mostro? I think he's just done enough to clear the Supra driver, but S43 will need to get those softs turned on as quickly as possible to go hunting after Sully and Karma. So to give you a recap, ladies and gentlemen, now that we've cleared the 30-minute mark of the story so far for everybody's race where we can, our race leader right now is IGTSH's Kende in the Aston Martin Vantage V12 GT3. Having started in third place, Kende was in third place, chasing after our race leaders at the start on the opening stint of Spider and Kimi. The two Jaguar drivers opting to go for a much longer opening stint on the racing soft by comparison with Kende, but Kende going from racing soft to racing soft and currently on his second stint with a gap of 5.9 seconds to our P2 driver. P2 is currently held by GTS-BOCA's Kimi, 6599. The leader of the two Jaguar drivers who are literally running in formation up towards turn 6 right now on lap 21. And really the story has been that these two Jaguar drivers of Kimi and Spider have been working together to save fuel as much as possible and to manage their tyres accordingly. And, well, having pitted much later than Kende, we believe it is the case that these two are trying to go as long as possible on their racing soft tyres, having done 2 racing soft stints. So one stint already completed, and they're currently on a racing soft stint. As we look further down the order there, and we just saw a small glitch on our timing screens. We thought that S43 had made the move on Sully. So then we come on to the story of Spider, who started on pole, and just behind him was Kimi at the time, who started P2, but Spider started on pole, currently in P3. But again, there was a change in position in the pits, with Spider having used 3% more fuel by comparison with Kimi, and Spider putting in a little bit of extra fuel in the pits by comparison with Kimi. Kimi coming out with 77% or 77 litres of fuel, whereas Spider came out with 80 litres. Behind them, we've got IGTSH's Padge, who had a very difficult start in the fact that he decided initially to start on the racing hards, do 1 lap and then pit, and dropped all the way to the back, going onto the racing softs, but then had a major error into turn 1, running wide onto the grass and sending himself almost spinning off, but caught the car just in time, and meaning that he had to come off of his first set of racing soft tyres at that point and go for another set. So Padge has got all the work to do as he's trying to charge after our podium right now, but he's 50 seconds down and effectively 1 stop out of sequence, it could be argued, but he has cleared the racing hard tyre, so he does have that in his favour. KCF Karma, meanwhile, having cleared the racing hard and the racing medium tyre, the Chevrolet driver now running all the way to the end on racing softs, we believe. The Chevrolet driver being in a battle, as we understand it, with RP Motorsports S43. Who, it should be pointed out, has cleared Sully. I think Sully has made an error somewhere, or alternatively recently just come into the pits. I think Sully has made a mistake, because surely, as we take a look at their time, 1:32.4 on the previous lap, they definitely made a mistake on the previous lap somewhere which sent them off circuit, because Sully was in P6 at the time. We're just checking that because of the story we're trying to tell here. But Karma right now in a battle with S43, who is our P6 driver right now. The Ford GT driver, who's only recently come out the pits, has cleared his racing hard and his racing medium stint and is hunting down Karma. Those two going to the end on racing softs from this point onwards. Mostro in the rear of the camera shot there, the Supra driver, the lead of our V3R drivers in the Toyota Supra, currently running around on a set of racing softs and has cleared both the racing hard and the racing medium stint and is chasing after S43 and Karma for a top 5 finish, and where it's been very close between these three so far. And Sully, with that mistake on the previous lap, which we're not sure where the mistake occurred, but we know one has been made, in P8, and Sully having a difficult race so far, but having cleared both the medium and the hard stint. Well, he's on the medium right now. Once he's cleared this, he'll be softs all the way to the end. Then it is JDM from Storm in the Ford GT, the second of our Ford GT drivers, who just hasn't really had the best of race in terms of race pace, but has been very consistent and is battling with JB Sub for P9 as it currently stands, and I believe has cleared at least one of the mandatory stints of the racing hard or the racing medium, and it's JB Sub in P10 right now. As Jester is coming out of the pits, having had that disastrous pit stop, which we'll talk about in a second. Pardon me, but JB Sub right now racing on those racing mediums. He's already cleared the hard stint and will be going to the end of the stint on the racing mediums, and there will be a stint on the racing softs all the way to the end, i.e. multiple stints. 1.2 seconds down on JDM at this point. We then got a 20.2 second gap to KCF's Jordan, the other Chevrolet driver from KCF, who, having cleared his hard and also his medium stint, is now charging around on racing softs until the very end. And in Jester, well, the disaster, and nobody is laughing. Well, the Jester is definitely not laughing in the fact that he cleared his medium, he cleared his hard stint, but then he underfueled when switching to the racing softs on his previous pit stop and had to take another stop immediately. As we see, Padge has come in to the pits and has gone from his racing softs to a racing medium stint. Now, will this be a one lapper or will it be a long stint? Because Padge right now is the man on a mission to make up every single second where it counts, as he comes out of the pits here in what is, I believe, P10, and he makes his way onto the Rev Proposter and onto another stint of the race. So those are the stories so far, folks, but really the race win is all being contested by our top three right now, and then it is the big question in terms of who is going to finish as the best of the rest in P4. Will it be Karma, will it be S43, or will it be a Mostro, as these guys are all changing up their positions consistently. Sully right now in P7, a little bit far back to get into that fight, but you never know what could happen, particularly if there's a lot of fighting towards the end or a mistake from a driver. So we have got a lot of distance to go, and we wait eagerly to see how it's all going to kick off as we go deeper and deeper into this race. But whilst we're waiting, of course, it's worth pointing out that this race is being broadcast in 2 languages. I'm bringing the English broadcast, of course, and we also do have GTS-BOCA Tosh, who is providing the French broadcast, as we see, looking back at the action, that GTS-BOCA's Kimi is feeling a little bit of pressure from Spider right now, having just lapped KCF Jordan, but we can see the 2 Jaguar drivers just working together, but Spider, of course, will want to eke those tiny little bits of pressure onto the lead Jaguar driver right now, because whilst they are both racing for the same manufacturer, of course, there is a pride for being the one who finishes ahead of the other, and we can see that Spider getting just that ever bit closer to GTS-BOCA as Kimi, as they make their way onto a lap number 25. And the idea will be, I think, what with Spider putting a little bit more fuel in the car, he will look to use that additional fuel to make those marginal gains on Kimi towards the end of this stint. Alternatively, it may be the case that perhaps Spider may feel towards the end of the stint that he can get ahead of Kimi and then go for what we call the break, where he manages to clear Kimi by a couple of seconds, and then Kimi has to work harder in order to close those seconds down. But of course, what with this being a 2-hour race and we're only at the first quarter, what that means is effectively our drivers have got to have a lot of stamina in the tank, as they are both closing down Kende right now. It should be pointed out, Kende, who was 6 seconds ahead on the lap number 20. That gap has come down over the last 5 laps, and it's now 5.1 seconds and oscillating around that mark. And I believe the Aston Martin driver is starting to feel a bit of heavy graining on those racing soft tyres as he makes his way through turn number 9 once again, drifting off of the apex entry curve there and then hooking the car up on exit. So it's a little bit quiet right now in terms of drivers battling out on the circuit, but that would be expected in a race like this. But what one should expect is that things will close up over time. And the other big battle, of course, is the one between Karma, S43 and Mostro, with Karma leading it right now for P4, 5.2 seconds ahead of S43, and S43 will be trying to do everything he can to close back up. But really what should be noted right now as we ride on board with S43 looking back from the top of the car is that the Supra of Mostro is gradually catching up to S43, albeit not at the huge rate that we'd perhaps expect, but we can see our race leader Kende coming into the pits right now. So Kende coming in on lap 25, and that releases our Jaguar drivers as we are getting quite a bit of lag off of S43's car. So we are going to watch instead from Mostro's perspective, looking forward from the Supra driver's perspective here as they make their way into a turn number 9 there, sponsored by Ace Lift Design. You will see on the rear livery of the Supra there. And they charge their way up towards turn number 10. And as they make their way into the corner here, just closing up under braking versus the Ford GT. And this is where, of course, hold on a second, I think we've seen a change for the race lead here between Spider and Kimi into turn number 4. Now, is this the break we were expecting from Spider? It was what we were saying earlier about the fact that he may be feeling he can go for that break. Let's take a look back and see what happened. Since they were coming out of turn 3 onto the Repo Imposter straight here, I think Spider is just going to simply have the momentum versus Kimi. Kimi, in fact, lifts out there and goes to the inside to let Spider through. So perhaps they're changing positions here, and Kimi feels he needs to save some fuel. And now Spider has a choice to make. Does he go for the brake, or does he just settle back into the fuel saving rhythm here and instead let Kimi now utilise him for a little bit of fuel saving? But that was a little bit of a surprise to the system there, and we'll wait and find out what's going to happen in due course. As we can see right now, making his way up at the hill out of turn 12 is Padge from IGTSH, chasing after JB Sub, and Padge only just coming out of the pits, of course, onto his racing mediums, and is in full attack mode versus the GWP driver. JB Sub goes as wide as possible into turn 1 there, I think trying to give Padge the maximum possible room, and I think the Frenchman realises he is not able to race with the Hungarian right now, and it would not be worth his while, as Padge is now starting to recover those places lost after the pit stop, of course, and he is the man on a mission. 1 minute 20 down on our leaders right now. How close can he get to the top 5 by the end of this one? Well, I think Padge has given himself a huge amount of work to put in here. If anybody can do it, it will be the Hungarian come the end of this race. As we look further afield, once again, of course, we can see that in the rundown towards turn number 4, Spider and Kimi still close together right now. Nothing really separating the two of them, but again, they are working the pace with one another. That is something for sure, as Kende, having come out of the pits, is 32.2 seconds behind, and it's noted that he's on another set of racing softs. So Kende saving his racing medium and racing hard stints to the very end, or at least to the second half of this race, as Karma is into the pits from P4, and this releases RP Motorsports S43 up into P4, but he's got Mostro on his 6 as S43 goes off, I believe. No, that is just a bit more lag there, ladies and gentlemen, so do not get confused. They didn't go charged off the circuit. We thought it was fatal, but not quite. His latency just hold him up a little bit there. But these two drivers right now will Mostro with the heavy fuel load there, I think trying to go long in this stint, whereas we can see the S43 a bit less fuel, but they're on similar tyre life, although I'd say that Mostro actually has been taking more life out of the front tyres in that Supra, really running it hard on the front wheels and the front brakes as a result by comparison with S43. And perhaps we could expect right now that Mostro is struggling to close up a little bit because of the tyre wear on those front tyres. It may be causing that Supra to understeer more into the corners compared to what he would like, and S43 just seems to have enough in the tank right now. Of course, in Sector 2, this is where the Supra starts to gain on the Ford GT, but it's in Sectors 1 and 3 where it seems that S43 has the upper hand. So it's a constant trade-off between the two of them. And we do wait to see what is going to happen between them, as we note that Mostro running out of turn 10 there and not able to gain too much on S43 at that time around as they charge down towards Junkow. I turn 12 once more to start completing lap 27 and move on to lap 28. But meanwhile, our leaders are still chasing one another around the circuit. It's almost as if they were conjoined at the hip, these two, but the fact they're running around so close together shows how comfortable they are in working with one another. And I think right now for the pair of them, they want that security that they've cleared Kende before they start fighting one another, as Kende right now is the best part of 31 seconds behind. And if they are to pit, then that does mean the IGTSH driver will come out in front of them once the pit stop is complete. But meanwhile, in the battles further down the field, we can see that Mostro starting to just fall back again versus S43, but it's so marginal, this gap. It keeps opening up in Sector 1, then it closes up in Sector 2, and then it opens up again in Sector 3, and we see it go back and forth time and time again, and I think it will be down to who runs the more comfortable strategy here, as we note that Storm's JDM there, the second of our 4 GT drivers, up into P6 right now on those racing softs, and I think coming towards the end of his current stint, where those soft tyres having had better days. And it is Padge right now who is still on a charge, with Karma coming out the pit, only recently pitting of course from what was P4 at the time, and Karma behind Padge right now, and I believe that Padge is really starting to put in lap after lap, although we do see that Spider actually has set the fastest lap at 30.0, which was only a couple of laps ago. So Padge is having to work an uphill battle here, and our lead drivers are finding themselves the fastest of anyone around the circuit, even running that fuel saving configuration, as they keep making their way around. But again, it'll be marginal gains for everybody, and marginal gains really do add up over the course of a 2-hour endurance race here. And we can see that Padge is just putting a little bit away from Karma, although Padge going very sideways there out of turn 9 and losing a bit of momentum did the Hungarian driver, as we know that he is on those racing mediums. And what about Karma? I believe he should be on a set of racing softs. So Karma is actually starting to come back at the IGTSH driver, and in fact that Aston Martin will not be as stable as it would perhaps like to be coming out of these corners. What are those racing mediums not offering as much grip, and we can see that Karma in fact getting a very strong run out of turn 12, and then the run down towards turn 1. I don't think he's going to be close enough here, but I think Karma will recognise that Padge is actually quite vulnerable right now as they make their way onto lap number 29, and we ride on board with Karma as he makes his way across the timing line, his previous lap being a 1:30.205, almost the fastest lap in fact. But as he comes up towards turn number 1 and through the centre rest as he goes, we can see that Padge just does not have the momentum as JB Sub comes into the pits for GTWGP from P9 coming off those racing mediums. But Padge not having the momentum at all out of turn 3, and I think Karma's going to look for the move here as Padge moves to the centre of the road, and they go into the braking zone for turn 4, and Karma makes a move up the inside here, a standard move into turn 4, although he goes deep out of turn 4 and he almost loses it but gets the car under control, and I think it's going to be the case that Padge here will be all over the back of Karma, at least for the run up towards turn 8. They've got 6 and 7 coming up right now, but the Chevrolet driver should have this done so long as he keeps it together on the brakes here into 8 and Padge doesn't get the opportunity to throw one up the inside. I think Padge has decided to back out of trying to make any potential lunge, because Karma will only come back at him again on the next lap, and it'll be a rinse and repeat. And Padge right now cannot afford to lose time. If he feels he's slower than Karma, then I think he will accept it and let Karma pull away and just use Karma's slipstream for a little bit of time. Remembering, ladies and gentlemen, that slipstream zone off the back of each car is 0.75 seconds, 3/4 of a second, and we can see that Karma has already broken away from Padge there as they make their way out of turn 12 for the 29th time of asking. And now Padge finds himself in the no man's land trying to chase after lap time on those racing medium tyres. Further back, of course, we can see right now, well, we've got our race leaders coming out of turn 12 there on our race radar, so they've already lapped a couple of drivers on the field and are gradually closing up to that battle for P7, P8 to lap those guys as well. We can see we have got a massive traffic jam of cars starting to build further back down the order here, and I think it's where everybody is chopping and changing and overtaking back runners here, and we can see that Jordan in P12 there being lapped by both S43 and Mostro. Mostro following after S43 right now, and that gap is increasing quite a bit. And Mostro now at the best part of 1.5 seconds back, and then it is P6 all the way back here at turn 4 with JDM from Storm in the Ford GT, the second of the Ford GT drivers, having a better race so far. And in fact JDM I think will be happy with where the car is currently sat, in the fact that he is effectively somewhere in the region of P7 to P8 out of the circuit when all the strategies are factored in. And will Karma, he will try and hold Karma up a little bit, I'm sure, because it will help his teammate out, and also it will help him out in potentially getting some good points tonight. But as we look further afield right now, we can see coming out of the centre S's, we have got V3R's Jester, who's now got to make up for all the lost time, and JB Sub just chasing after him at 4 seconds down the road, having just been lapped by Kende here. And 4 seconds up the road from him is the Supra driver, who JB Sub will want to hunt down and beat in his Chevrolet, of course. And it's KCF Jordan right now in P12, the last of our runners, making his way into turn 1. As we look further around the circuit, of course, and in fact, if you don't mind me, I'm just going to have a very quick sip of water. We can see that our race leaders still running nose to tail, and I believe will be due for a pit stop within the next 2 to 3 laps. As we see, folks, that Storm's JDM, the 4GT driver, the second of our 2 4GT drivers, the pit crew are out there and ready to service the machine. And as he comes in here at the end of a racing soft stint, he'll be going on to another set of racing soft tyres, as sponsored by Goodyear there, provided by Goodyear Eagle, of course. As he makes his way in, they'll be doing a mandatory stop. Should be no major worries concerning the car here or the pit stop being conducted. And now they're going to be putting fuel in the vehicle and he'll be back underway in short order. Now, where will this bring him out? I suspect it's going to bring him out somewhere in the region of what should be about P9, although P9 is coming through the center S's right now. So he should come out ahead of Jester. In fact, Storm's JDM is coming out of the pits right now. So I think it's going to be quite close between himself and what is, if we just take a look around, so Storm is coming through here and he's going to have fallen behind our P8 driver of Sully, but he'll be in P9 by the end of the time he exits here, and he's got a nice comfortable gap to V3R's Jester, 3.2 seconds down the road, and closing for the time being down the ref Proposter. That gap will come down to about 2.6 seconds, but remember that JDM is now on fresh tyres and a full tank of fuel and can go charging after the guys ahead. Sully being the first man on his target, and Sully in the Chevrolet, of course, they're coming towards sort of the midpoint of a stint right now, but Sully doing a very good job in that Corvette, running around in good order and setting good lap times here. Sully in P8 with a 1:31.9 on his previous lap. One lap down on our leaders right now, but Sully has had a relatively quiet and successful race. As we see the big pit stop comes in, and S43 in the pits right now, they're putting fuel in the car, and what this will mean is that Mostro is released for the time being, but what about Karma, the driver who was in P4 before the pit stops between our battlers for P4 came in? As we see our race leaders also pit as well. We'll come back to them shortly, folks, as we can see that Karma has cleared S43 once again out of the pit. And Padge, I believe, will be ahead of S43 now, but will be due for a pit stop in a very near future. But S43 has got a sizable gap to make up versus Karma. That gap is in the region of what is about 9.5 seconds. So Karma has really opened up a gap in the hunt for P4 versus S43. And then Mostro has got to react to this, because at the moment he is going to lose out even more versus Karma, who's only 19.3 seconds behind. So I think Karma is making that break for P4, which you'll have wanted through the successive pit stops. And now we can see that our race leaders at the time, well, Kende has already come down to the ref Proposter, so he's got back ahead of our P2 and P3 Jaguar drivers here. But our two Jaguar drivers coming out of the pits onto the racing medium now. Now, will they just do one lap on the mediums, or will they do multiple laps and turn it into a long stint? We will find out in due course, folks, as they make their way back out onto the circuit and down towards turn number 4. But my prediction right now, to be honest with you, is that Kende is in a losing battle in terms of lap time versus Spider and Kimi. They just seem to be closing this gap up. The gap now is 13.6 seconds. Remember that Kende is on a set of races softs, which are already halfway through their stint. They're just running their tyres so much longer, and they seem to have the pace on worn tyres, whereas Kende does not. As Padge comes into the pits off of his racing mediums, and surely we'll see a reaction from Mostro by the end of lap 33 here, because Karma has already stripped the best part of 1.5 seconds out of the V3R driver, has the KCF driver, and Karma right now is really pushing hard as he makes his way down the ref Proposter to turn 4. The Chevrolet driver knows he has got P4 at his sights, and he is hunting it with feverish desire. It is an absolute push from the Chevrolet driver as he is pulling away from S43 only slightly. It's only about a 10th a lap at the moment as S43 is trying to react and get back in that fight for P4, but that gap has opened up, and S43 will not be happy to have seen that on his timing screens. As we see, meanwhile, coming down towards turn number 1 once again to commence a lap number 34, it will be Spider and Kimi who are again in that formation. And they stay out on the racing mediums. So they are going long in this stint on the racing mediums, I suspect, ladies and gentlemen. They're going to try and make this tyre work long. And this will be Kende's opportunity to use the racing soft to his advantage and try and find a way to get time over these drivers. Of course, Kende does also have that mandatory stop, which you'll be concerned about, as Mostro comes into the pits and what is P4. And Karma, well, where is the Chevrolet driver? He's already making his way onto the start-finish straight here, so Karma will have cleared Mostro by a good margin. But what about S43? This is the big question that is being asked right now of the Ford GT driver. Will he come back around ahead of Mostro, or will Mostro have cleared the Ford GT, or will they be side-by-side into turn 4? We're about to find out. So Mostro makes his way onto lap 34 then, and we can see... not Mostro, S43 makes his way to lap 34 as Mostro right now taking on fuel in the pits, and I think S43 has done enough to clear the Supra driver for the time in, as the Supra is still in the pit box. And Mostro makes his way through turn 3, and also S43 makes his way through turn 3, and it means that Mostro is going to come back out in P6 right now, as Sully is not going to be able to come out ahead of him, and we can see that Mostro has got it all to do once again in terms of closing up to the back of S43. Of course, from Mostro's perspective, he will know that he can go a little bit deeper into the race based on the fuel he's got and the tyres he's now got versus S43 as the sequence of pit stops has panned out so far. But Mostro has got a lot of work to do, with that gap being 15.4 seconds. That longer run hasn't worked out for Mostro so far, but perhaps he's got an ace up his sleeve later on, as all these drivers have done their racing medium and racing hard stints in that battle for P4. So it is a run on the racing softs now all the way to the end for those three. As we see, Kende haven't picked up a penalty for track limits. We're hearing track limits at turn 2 in the centre S there, where he's cut across it, picked up a half-second penalty, and he's got his teammate ahead of him right now, and he'll be hoping that Paj decides to get out of the way as soon as possible, because Kende right now is losing time, and losing time in a horrendous fashion. Remember, he's on old racing softs, whereas Spider and Kimi on racing mediums, and fresh ones at that, as he makes his way into turn 9 right now, and he'll probably be on the radio to his teammate very shortly, or at least their team manager will be, to say, Paj, you're holding your teammate up, get out the way, because Kende is pushing hard right now and he needs to make up every single second he can. But in the meantime, we can see that Karma right now making his way out of the center S's once again and down towards turn 4. The gap between him and S43, 8.3 seconds. S43 has clawed down a portion of that gap, and I think it is S43 who is on the charge right now and is trying to catch up to the Chevrolet driver in a very quick order. But of course, the more he takes out of his tyres now, the more difficult that Ford GT is going to become later on in the stint, and that is the knife edge nature of that Ford GT. If you take the life out the tyres or rev that car out, it's going to come back to haunt you later on in each stint, where the fact it is so greedy on fuel by comparison with, say, Mostro Supra here or the Chevrolet C7 of Karma, as Mostro goes a little bit deep out of turn 4 there, but keeps it on the circuit just about. And we can see that Kende right now still chasing after, I believe, his teammate, or is his teammate coming to the pits? No, he's still chasing after Paj, who's a little bit out the road, but Kende has actually dropped back a little bit from his teammate here. So Kende having a very difficult previous lap, a 131.7 for a race leader right now, whereas Spider completing the previous lap on a 131.3. So in fact, the two Jaguar drivers are matching, if not a little bit faster than Kende. This is not working out for our leader in the Aston Martin, who just does not seem to have the ability to sustain the pace, and surely a pit stop is due for Kende, as we see Karma coming into the pits here, and this is a little bit unexpected. In fact, this pit stop, it's a little bit early on for Karma, and I think it might be the case, in fact, that as a result, he may have underfueled the car or just gone for a rapid stint, but S43 is going to be back up into P4 right now, so this battle for P4 is by no means over yet, and I think Karma must have underfueled. Surely he underfueled the car for the previous stint, because that is a very early pit stop, or perhaps he's playing something here. Perhaps he realises that now's the time to go for a set of mediums or hards. Perhaps they're reacting to something, because I can't see what they're reacting to right now, as this is going to bring Karma out behind Mostro, and I think he might even be exposed to Sully. Why I say that, no, he's not exposed to Sully, as we can see that Karma is coming out of the pits right now, and well, hold on a second. Sully's coming through the centre S's right now. Will Karma have cleared Sully? This is going to be close. And in the end, it's going to be Sully who is actually ahead of Karma. And I believe also JDM is going to be side by side in the run down towards turn 4 versus Karma. And JDM's just not close enough, in fact, to go for a side by side here. And Karma has now got more traffic in his way. And I think Karma must have underfueled, because that is a disaster for the Frenchman, in the fact now he's got behind Sully and he's got to find a way to get through. And it's another set of racing softs as he makes his way up through turn 7 and up into 8. But I'm wondering what on earth has happened there, because that has not worked out for the lead KCF driver as it currently stands, in the fact now he has got it all to do with just over an hour remaining. As we can see, looking further around the field right now, JDM falling off a little bit from Karma, not able to keep close enough. And meanwhile, further around, we are just trying to look for our relative drivers here. And we can see that we've got a couple of drivers into the pits here. We've got Jester, who's just come out of the pits. And we've also got Jordan, who's currently in the pits. The V3R driver going on to another stint after that disastrous misfuel earlier on those racing soft tyres now. And meanwhile, it is Jordan, who has fueled up the car and gone to another set of racing softs as well after that incident earlier on, which put him all the way to the back of the field. But you never know, he could still gain some positions right towards the end. As we see, our race leader Kende is being reeled in very gradually by Spider and Kimi, and surely a pit stop's got to be in order for Kende very soon, because this is not a good position for it to be, as we can see that Karma has got past Sully into turn 1. Let's take a look back and see what happened there for you, ladies and gentlemen. So I think we're going to be expecting well, he already got it done before he was even into turn 1 there, it should be pointed out. So it was in the drag race down towards turn 1, although Sully actually did try to come back versus Karma on the inside into the corner to try and get Karma to go deep and make a mistake. But Karma in the end did not make the mistake, and Sully had to settle in behind. So I think the drag race out of turn 12 is where Karma got the position, as would perhaps be expected, what with Sully being off the strategy compared to Karma right now. Sully coming to the end on very heavily warm racing softs, whereas Karma is good to go. And JDM will be trying to hunt down Sully as quickly as possible here, and will be grateful for the fact that Sully had to battle a little bit with Karma, because that will have helped him close the gap somewhat as they make their way through turn 9. And we've got 4 drivers here, all within close proximity, coming up to turn 10 now in the battle for what is P6 right now. Karma in P6, although I think he's going to pull away very quickly here. And it's Sully in P7, Storm's JDM in P8, and then we've got Padge, who has come out of the pits recently, remember, and onto another set of racing softs. And this is the Aston Martin driver who's literally got to try and make it all up as he goes for the rest of the race on those racing soft tyres, and he's already within striking distance here of JDM as they come charging up the hill. And I think the Hungarian versus the French, well, it's going to go in the Hungarian's favour, but the Ford GT ahead will have their legs on the straight. They're going side by side towards the timing line, although that Ford GT is so strong on the power, and you can see the V12 Vantage has to literally eke it on the inside and has to go maximum brake into turn 1. And as the camera pans round, Padge has got it done, but he had to work that hard, and I think it cost him a lot of fuel and also brake force on those front tyres in order to get ahead. And now he's going to go hunting down GTWGP's Sully in towards turn number 4. Now, will Sully be able to hold off the Aston Martin? Well, it's already Padge coming out to the inside, and as they go into the corner here, I think Sully gives up the position, realising unless he can go for a comeback, Padge is through. So 2 places gained by Padge over the course of sectors 1 and into sector 2 on lap 38, but it's very close, and Padge right now really up against it, because he's literally got to keep gaining as many places as possible in each and every stint and try to make short work of every driver he comes up against. But speaking of work right now, JDM is very close to the back of Sully and will be looking for the move on the Chevrolet driver as the Ford GT driver goes to the cut back into turn 9, but Sully parks on the apex and parks it tight on turn 10 as they make their way into the braking zone. They both pop out onto the racing line once more. As we look back here from Sully's car, as we see that Kende is coming to the pits and come out in P3, we see JDM trying to go around the outside out of 11, but Sully says no and pulls to the racing line, and JDM settles in behind. Surely JDM's going to have the momentum here up the hill now. It is a very long drag race to turn number 1, and will Sully be able to hold on as JDM is absolutely flooring it in that Ford GT, and you can imagine that V8 is literally being cranked to its maximum right now to try and get the move, and Sully into the pits. So JDM doesn't have to do anything to overtake, but he will have lost a little bit of time battling with Sully. And I think Sully here may have gone for an undercut versus JDM. JDM being due for a pit stop probably within the next 3 to 4 laps. But our P3 driver right now, who came in from the lead only just a couple of laps ago, Kende, going to a set of racing mediums, so getting his medium stint out of the way, and I think reacting to Spider and Kimi being on their racing medium tyres right now and trying to go long on that set. Now, will Kende immediately come back into the pits on these racing mediums? We will find out, because they're only on their first lap. And as he makes his way up towards the start-finish line here, will we see a reaction from the driver? We will, of course, keep you informed of that as we look around the field right now. And we can see that it has spaced out a little bit between our drivers as Sully comes out of the pits into what looks to be P10 right now. Well, Kende coming up towards our timing line and continues on the racing medium. So Kende, not doing the same as his teammate, is making a stint of those racing medium tyres. So the Hungarian will now have to work it hard to the very end on those racing mediums, then potentially the racing hard, or perhaps a switch back onto the racing softs, as we've got less than an hour to go now. 58.5 minutes remaining. So to give you a recap, ladies and gentlemen, now we're at the halfway mark of the race. Our race leaders right now are RHG's Spider and GTS-BOCA Kimi. The 2 Jaguar drivers really been inseparable. They've been tied together nose to tail throughout the race. Spider, having started on pole, has been leading this one for the majority of it, although he has traded up the place with Kimi. And Kende, our P3 driver, but Kende is on an offset strategy. Spider and Kimi both going very long on their stints and working together to save fuel by looks of things and save tyres. Kimi, of course, being behind here, the second of the 2 drivers from GTS-BOCA. Then it's IGTSH's Kende right now, who's on an offset strategy where he's more aggressive on his tyres, what the Aston Martin seemingly wearing for its tyres faster and being more aimed at shorter stints. And he is 27.1 seconds down on our race leaders right now. And it is a case that I think for Kende, he's literally got to maximise every single lap and forget about conserving those tyres. Then we've got the best part of 13.8 seconds to RP Motorsports S43, who is currently in P4 after what appeared to be a mistake in the pits from Karma. KCF Karma, who's currently P6, who was P4 and on course to retain that P4 following the pit stops. But in the end, Karma, I think, underfueled during a stint. Alternatively, we've miscalculated the offset between their stints. And S43 in the Ford GT right now have run a very consistent race. He is being chased by V3R's Mostro, who's 15.1 seconds behind, but whereas Mostro was a lot closer earlier on, he has fallen back a little bit in the Toyota Supra over the last stint or so, and it is 12.6 seconds back to KCF Karma, who is having to regain all the time lost by comparison with the drivers ahead of him right now in that hunt for P4. It's then IGTSH's Padge, who is 4.5 seconds behind Karma, remembering that Padge has already used up his racing hard tyres, and he's also used up, I believe, his racing medium tyres, and is on racing softs all the way to the end. Is the Hungarian driver in the Aston Martin absolutely attacking after a very unfortunate incident into turn 1 where he ran wide, ran out onto the grass and caught the car successfully, but it cost him a lot of time. And Padge really is the one to watch out for. He'll be throwing a spanner in the works for everybody around him, as we can then see that JDM from Storm in the second of our Ford GTs in P8 right now, 2.5 seconds down on Padge and losing time very gradually, but 23.7 seconds ahead of GTWGP's JB Sub, who is in P9 running in the Chevrolet C7, 11.4 seconds ahead of his teammate Sully, and in fact JB Sub coming into the pits, so that will drop him, I believe, all the way down to what will be either P10 or P11 as Sully comes through to pick up the places here. Sully having been in the fight for P7 over the course of the race so far, and we look forward to seeing what the Frenchman, the second of the two GTWGP drivers, is able to do in the American machine there. And then we've got V3R Jester in P11 right now, who's just been lapped by Kende, although Kende has got a huge time penalty for track limits somewhere and is having to burn that immediately, so Jester gets back in front for the time being as he makes his way into turn 1 in the Toyota Supra. And Jester having had a very quiet race after that very unfortunate moment in the pits, as we see he jumps back up into P10 and JB Sub will come out behind. Well, the fact he's severely underfueled for a racing soft stint, only putting 20 litres of fuel in the car instead of approximately 77 litres, which the Toyota Supra can manage. And JB Sub has come out behind, and now really it is KCF Jordan who is running last of our drivers right now, and is the best part of, as we see our timing screens update here, he is the best part of 12 to 13 seconds behind JB Sub as we currently speak. So that's where things currently stand in terms of lap times as Jordan makes his way through Sector 1 and down the Reproposta towards Sector 2. But Jordan has had a very quiet race as we see JDM coming into the pits from P8 at this time, and that means based on where he is right now, I think Sully is going to be coming through. Now this will be quite close between Sully and JDM here. These two have been battling for P8 all race in terms of the overall strategy, and they've been the closest on circuit in that battle for P8. And as Sully makes his way up the hill here, we can see that JDM is parked up in the pits right now. They're getting the tyres changed, but Sully is charging down the straight here. This is going to be very close. It is the best part of a 35-second pit stop for a refuel and also a tyre change here. And will Sully have done this, or will it be JDM ahead as Sully comes into turn 1? He's got the centre S's to go, of course, as he makes his way through it. And JDM is starting to come out of the pits. We can hear JDM's engine side by side right now, and I think Sully has just done enough as we see that the Storm driver just sees Sully ahead of him. So Sully has made it out ahead of JDM after another round of pit stops, but these two are so close together right now. It can only take 1 or 2 laps or one misfortunate pit stop or overfuel to completely turn the tables, as now JDM needs to close down a window of 2.7 seconds, having gone to another set of racing softs. He'll be on racing softs to the end of this race, of course. We can see our race leaders still nose to tail right now, making their way up into turn 10 on lap 43 and very gradually starting to come to the end of their racing medium stint. Although I say that, I think they've got the best part of a third of it to go, while the fuel remaining in Spider's car. The tyre wear, it's worth noting, in GTS-BOCA's Kimi car is doing a little bit better by comparison, but then again, he can afford to be gentler on the brakes because he can come out the corners a bit slower than Spider and then simply use Spider's slipstream to charge along the straights and catch back up. But we can see Kende right now 28.8 seconds behind our race leaders, gradually closing that gap down, but the Aston Martin driver really having to work the car hard, and it is an uphill battle all the way for Kende. And you do have to feel for him right now because this is not where you wanted to be. He was running behind our race leaders at the start, but that gap is opening up, and I think Kende right now may be considering that perhaps P3 will be the best he can get, but he won't settle for that, of course. He will keep on fighting to the bitter end. As we take a brief sip of water, and we'll be back very shortly for you, ladies and gentlemen. So S43 coming into the pits. Now, this is the end of his expected stint. Mostro, meanwhile, in P5 is 14 seconds just down the road. So I think Mostro will be ahead of S43, that's a given, and Mostro has got about a third of his stint remaining, and then it is Karma. The big question will be over the Frenchman here, who's making his way to our timing line right now. Now this is going to be very close here between S43 and Karma, and perhaps Karma wasn't out of sequence. It just seems to be uncharacteristically early for a pit stop, but we can see that S43 still in the pits right now. Karma coming into the center S's, and as Karma got back in front of S43, S43 going for a low amount of fuel here. And, well, hold on a second, what on earth is going on with the refueling strategies? Because S43 went for a lot more fuel early on, and now 36% fuel. Unless S43 has got something up his sleeve here. Karma is back into P5, but of course remember that Karma will be coming into the pits in approximately 1 to 2 laps. But this is really unpredictable right now in terms of who's going to hold on to that P4 place. And look who is in amongst these guys right now. GTS-BOCA's Padge, who is, to be fair, coming to the end of his stint right now, but he is gradually closing up in the sequence to the battle to P4. And I think Padge could be on course for a top 5 here if he keeps up this momentum, because he is charging around at a good rate of knots here, and we just got to wait to find out. But S43 will know that Padge is ahead of it for the time being, but I don't think he'll be too dissuaded. But he's gone very light on fuel, has S43 this time, and I think that may have been a mistake, because surely he's been refueling a lot longer, unless he's got some sort of fuel saving strategy lined up. Alternatively, we're expecting a very short stint from S43, and then he's going to go for one long one to complete the race. But this is very odd from the Frenchman here, as he's lagging all over our screen right now, and we just continue on our merry way, switching over to Spider, who's not breaking away from Kimmy for the time being. We're still waiting to see what will happen between these two as they go even deeper into the race. And as we look further afield, again, really, Mostro right now is in the driving seat, as we see that Padge comes into the pit with only 2 litres of fuel remaining. And where is Sully? Well, Sully is all the way down at turn 10 right now compared to Padge. So Padge has definitely cleared the battle for P8 right now, as we can see, looking back from Sully's car, that he's got JDM chasing after him. But JDM just trying to get to that slipstream zone. He's done it under braking into turn 12, but will he nail it coming out the corner as our race leaders come into the pits off of their medium stint right now? And we will flip back over to that shortly, because I believe Kende may just be able to come out ahead of them by the smallest of margins here. As they're charging along towards the start finish line to go to lap 45, we can see that Sully right now is just a bit ahead of JDM, but JDM gradually closes out. That Ford GT is getting ever closer in the rearview mirror of Sully's car, as we can see under braking JDM going very deep on the brakes there and trying to close up as much as humanly possible. And as they come along here, I believe Padge has got it done, and Padge is now up into P7 as he comes out into the Repro Poster here. He's just got out ahead of the battle for P8, and this is what he would have wanted. As Sully versus JDM, JDM goes to the inside into turn 4 here, and Sully not offering much of a defense here. I think Sully may be thinking that they're perhaps going to lose momentum by fighting too much here, as JDM has pitted a little bit after Sully right now. Perhaps Sully is playing the long game here and decided just to be conservative with it, as Spider and Kimmy have both come back out ahead of Kende here. And remember, they actually had a bit more fuel in the car by comparison with Kende. When coming into the pits, they had about 20% compared to Kende running it dry, and they've both gone to the racing hard, whereas Kende is still on the medium. So this is where it all starts to play out right now. Now, will Spider and Kimmy pit at the end of this lap to get off of the hard, or will they go long on the hard tyre on the basis that it is about 2 seconds slower than the soft? But do remember, ladies and gentlemen, we now are into just over 45 minutes remaining, and a long hard stint here complemented by a reasonable soft stint will take the car most likely to the end, and that will put pressure on Kende here to really push hard. And remember, Kende still has to do a hard stint versus our race leaders, who are now getting that hard stint out of the way, with Kende behind V3R's Jester right now. He'll want Jester to give him the toe up the hill, but Jester gets out of the way because of the blue flags, so Kende's not going to get too much of a toe up here, as we can see. In fact, Jester on the throttle still, and Kende has to go the long way round to get round the Super Driver, who goes into the pits there, and our race leaders are back into the pits to get off the hard tyre. So now they're going to go to the end on softs all the way to the end, and it is Kende who will need to react by triggering that racing hard stint and then choosing to go to the softs to the end. But when's it going to happen? We'll find out, as we see the battle for P8 is reigniting. Sully now on the attack versus JDM, but Sully not close enough to affect him. And I think Sully right now will want to be behind JDM and use the Ford GT to pull that Chevrolet up the straights. I mean, the Chevrolet is fast up the straights, but that Ford GT just has the better straight line speed potential. JDM right now in that uncomfortable position where he's effectively got to work that car long and hard in the Ford GT and also be up against it because it's not a fuel saver. As we're seeing all sorts of pit stops kicking off now with Karma, KCF Karma coming into the pits on 1 litre of fuel. We can see that Kimi and Spider are both into the pits, and Mostro is now up into P2 ahead of Kimi and Spider, but of course they're coming out of the pits and they will be in P3 and P4, but we suspect they'll be P2 and P3 out on the circuit in short order. We'll have Mostro due for a pit stop soon. And well, hold on a second. We're seeing a change of position here in Spider versus Kimi. Spider's got back ahead of Kimi here. I'm not sure what the order was. I think it was that Spider has just got back ahead and Kimi did come out of the pits but ahead of Spider, but decided to let Spider back through using that whole fuel saving technique once again. And then it is S43 from RP Motorsport in P5 right now, who is chasing after not Spider and Kimi, but really chasing after Mostro. Given the fact that he's on low fuel, he's gone for a very quick stint here as S43, and he has set the fastest lap of the race, it should be pointed out, a 1:29.8, and I think he's gone for a short stint here to then try and make 2 long stints so the softs go all the way to the end. So he's getting this short stint out of the way now, so that way he can gain time on the drivers around him. It's a smart move by S43 potentially here, depending on how it plays out. But he will have to pit soon, and KCF Karma is only 35 seconds down the road, having cleared Jordan, and he's got Padge in his rearview mirror. In fact, if you look back from Karma right now, what you can see is our P7 man of Padge is chasing him down as Mostro comes into the pits here, and Karma is in an uncomfortable position because he has got a fast charging Aston Martin, who right now is being blocked a little bit by his teammate. Fortunately, Jordan will need to get out of the way because of blue flags very shortly, but he will do his best to cost a little bit of time to Padge where he can. It's not really the best of places to let a drive through, but Jordan makes a bit of a mistake and finally lets Padge through, and it has opened the gap up by a region of 2/10, but it's not much for Karma, as Karma has now got a huge amount of Aston Martin chasing after him. That V12 6-litre engine will be roaring after the Chevrolet. And Mostro in the pits right now. We can see that RP Motorsport has cleared Mostro definitely, and Mostro is coming out of the pits. Karma, in fact, is on that straight right now, and I think that Mostro has come out of sequence and has actually gained the position over Karma. What if Karma having the difficulty of that short stop earlier on? Although I say that, let's see how it all plays out as Mostro comes out the pits in P5. And is Mostro our man now who's going to be coming home in P4? Because remember, S43 has got a pit very soon as Karma makes his way down the Reproposta right now, and Padge is chasing after him. And do keep in mind that Padge is on a fresh set of racing softs, as is Karma. So these two will be trying to bear down on one another. Who is going to come out top? Well, Padge does seem to have that pace advantage. Excuse me. Padge does seem to have that pace advantage over one lap. The previous lap for Padge, well, given the fact he was held up a little bit by Jordan, a 1:30.5, whereas Karma on that previous lap was a 1:30.5 as well. So they're matching lap times, but I reckon Padge has got about 2-3 tenths over the Chevrolet driver, has the Aston Martin driver, as they make their way through Sector 2. And you can see this is where the Aston Martin is closing up. Padge just feels so much more comfortable in the corners here, and I think it is going to be the case that soon he will be within striking distance of Karma as we look forward from Padge's car, and he'll be looking to make sure that C7's rear end gets ever bigger in his screen, in his visor, as he makes his way to turn 12 back into Junção right now, and then the run down the start finish straight once again onto lap 49. And not close enough this time coming out Junção. In fact, Karma had the better run out the corner there, so Padge is going to have to do it all again on the next lap. But these two are trading lap times right now, and Karma knows he has got to get going because it is so close between the two of them, as we do see RP Motorsports S43 just running a little bit behind our two Jaguars, who are in our top 3 right now, but S43 out of sequence in the fact that he will need to pit at the end of this lap, we suspect, where there's been a short stint, and it will be Mostro who goes back up into P4 come the end of it, as Kende right now is running around on the racing mediums and still has his racing hard stint to go. Although the question will be, of course, for Kende, will he go for a long stint on the racing hard, or will he do one lap and then go to the soft for the end? Well, given the fact he hasn't got anything else to try, if he opted to go for that racing hard, it's going to cost him a lot of time. But we will wait and see, of course, what the fact we've got under 45 minutes to go. Our drivers are now starting to feel that tiredness kicking, although they will have practiced for this. But the tiredness does start to kick in now, and it becomes a case of who's got the energy reserves left, who can go that a little bit deeper, and who can just keep pulling off those laps, as we see S43 coming into the pits, and Kimi and Spider just running along down towards turn 1 once again. Now, of course, with S43 coming into the pits, we can see that Karma right now in P6 with Padge right behind him. The two drivers coming through turn 11. Well, Mostro will definitely clear S43, we reckon, although I say that, Mostro is quite a way back, 27 seconds, so if S43 goes for another short stop, he'll come back out in front, but Mostro surely will have this done because S43 will need to fuel that car quite a way in order to get to the end on just two more stints, we should say, so one more pit stop after this one. And Mostro coming through the center S's right now, and S43 has not finished refueling the car yet, so Mostro will be ahead of him, but where is Padge and Karma? Well, they're coming down in towards turn 1, and S43 has just come out the pits, and it's making its way through the pit lane to come to the end here, and our P5 and P6 driver have cleared S43, and S43 will now be down in P7 and at risk now of having to battle his way back into the order, having fueled the car long this time. He's come out in P7 and has now got his sights on Padge and Karma, P6 and P5 respectively, and behind him is Storm's JDM, who is due to come into the pits within the next 3 to 4 laps, and Sully has just come into the pits trying to undercut Storm. JDM, I reckon, given the fact that the battle for P8 has been between those two drivers throughout the entirety of the race, and JB Sub is now coming up into turn 1 for the 50th time of asking. So it's all chop and change once again, ladies and gentlemen, as Sully is currently in the pit, and it'll be his teammate who gets out ahead of him, of course, and then it'll be Jester who's making his way onto the start-finish straight right now, who will not be able to get ahead of Sully, and Sully will have a nice bit of clear air ahead of him, and I think we'll have the opportunity to close down that gap in terms of the overall time in the strategy versus JDM, or the fact he will have a couple of laps in hand versus JDM to put in some good flying laps. We can see our race leaders, well, our effective race leaders, when Kende comes into the pits, we believe they're making their way just behind right now as Kende is coming towards the end of his current racing medium stint. Probably about 3 to 4 more laps to go on those tyres before he'll need to come in and refuel the car and go to either his hards or another set of racing softs. But surely the racing hards must be on the cards right now for Kende, because he hasn't got long and he will need to run them as it's a mandatory tyre requirement. But meanwhile, in that battle for P5, we can see that Padge is getting ever closer to the back of Karma's car right now. The Chevrolet versus the Aston Martin. The Aston Martin driver has been working overtime to close this gap up, and he's really started to reel in that P5 position. As they come down into turn 4 once again, you can see Padge under braking is just going in so much deeper on the brakes here, and I think the Hungarian realises he's really got to throw caution to the wind even in this scenario. He can't afford to end up in a strategy race versus Mostro, Karma or S43, because they'll beat him on the strategy race. But if Padge goes for the all-in and just absolutely thrashes the Aston Martin and thrashes every single lap, then that's where he may be able to pick up that P4, as Mostro is only 8.7 seconds up the road from these guys as they roll their way through turn number 9 and now coming up to turn 10, and this is where Padge is stronger through the run of turn 8 through to turn 10. You can see he is closed up. He looks to the inside here but can't quite find a way in, as he's just trying to put the threat down on Karma and trying to put himself in the rearview mirrors as much as possible of Karma to try and distract the Frenchman as the Hungarian gets close, under braking into turn 12. They come out of Junction whilst the Chevrolet is very strong out of turn 12. You can see Padge is right behind it, and it's going to be a long drag race now up towards turn number 1, and I think the Aston Martin may be in a position to go for a move here, or will he hold back for another lap and just simply keep mounting the pressure? Well, he can't take too long because S43 is only a couple of seconds back in P7 right now as they make their way into turn 1 on lap 52, and we can see that Karma went a little bit deep then. In fact, Padge had to take onto the curve there. I think he miscalculated how close he gets to the back of Karma, and he is trying to force his way through for the center S's. He can't find a way, but he is all over the back of Karma. Karma struggling through sector 1 versus Padge. Padge getting ever closer. He moves to the inside for turn 4, and will Padge beat him on the brakes? Karma holds onto the position for the time being, just cutting off the door there for Padge, and Padge settles it behind once again, and the gap between these two and S43, who is looking on right now. We look from S43's perspective, looking forward here, and you can see he is closing up, and he is almost within the slipstream zone right now. He is only 1 second behind us. Padge goes for a move on the inside into turn number 8, and he forces the move there as Karma is knocked a little bit. Karma goes into an oversteer through turn 9 there and gets back ahead of Padge, and Padge has to find another way through, as we saw it there from S43's perspective. Karma, I think, just got knocked a little bit by the contact between himself and Padge, and that is what caused him to roll over the curb there of turn number 9. A racing incident, but all the same, Padge will not be happy with that because now he's got to do it again. And S43, the Ford GT, is all over the back of this pair, and now it's going to be a three-way battle into turn 1. The drag race commences all the way up to turn 1 as they come up the hill then, and we can see going on to lap 53 who is going to be the leader come the end of the run out of the Reproposter at turn 4. We'll find out very shortly, but of course we've got to get to turn 1 first, and Padge not close enough to go for the immediate move, or is he? As they come into the break-ins over turn 1, he looks to the inside, but there's no juice there, so he holds back once again, and S43 stays behind looking for a potential man as JDM comes into the pits for P8. We'll keep our eyes on that versus him and Sully, but meanwhile we're staying on this battle for P5 right now as Karma is pushing hard and S43 is lagging horrendously behind. He's stuttering all over the screen, of course, and Padge is deciding to settle for it, although he looks to the inside. Karma going a little bit shallow on the brakes there, and Padge finds a place on the inside, but they're side by side through 5, and now they'll be up the hill, but Padge will be pushed to the outside. Karma on the inside, and then Karma gets the switch back there and gets back onto the racing line, and Padge cannot find a way through for the time being, but will Padge dive into turn 8? Into turn 8 they go. He doesn't go for the move, but you can see that Karma versus that Aston Martin. Well, the Aston Martin has got the Ford GT trying to find a way through, and S43 doesn't find the move there through turn 9, although there is a little bit of contact between the pair of them as we see that Padge, what on earth has happened there? I think Padge has been sent flying by, I'm not sure if it was S43 who knocked him, but there seems to have been a bit of lag there, but Padge has been sent flying, and S43 has actually knocked, well, I looks of things, the lag has knocked Karma as well, and S43 is lagging quite horrendously, but let's just take a look at what happened there with regards to Padge. So coming into the corner here, we're actually going to look backwards here from S43's perspective. Was there a knock from the car? Well, S43 tried to squeeze in a little bit, and it does look as though there was a knock from S43's car because we didn't see anything else there as we look back to our drivers once again. And in that battle for P5 now to turn 1, we can see that S43 is trying to find a way. He's on the inside of Karma, we believe, into turn 1 as Padge comes into the pits after being knocked off there. And Padge will not be happy, of course. And Karma has now got S43 breathing down his neck and bouncing all around in his rearview mirror. It's very hard to tell for Karma, I'm sure, as to where S43 is going to be coming at him exactly, but he's not close enough into turn 4 this time. It is S43 as Kende comes into the pits. We're a 25-second lead over Spider, and Kimi has not worked out on this stint for him, as we can see that Storm's JDM has come out ahead of Sully by a window of about 3 seconds. So JDM has jumped Sully through this round of pit stops, and Kende, will he go to a new set of softs, or will he go onto those hards finally? Because there's not long left. We've got 35 minutes remaining. Kende right now in the pits. They're putting the fuel in the car, of course, and they're releasing the car, and he's coming out on a set of hards here, but he will be coming out in P3, and I think this does signal the end of his aspirations for potentially picking up the race win here, because effectively now Spider and Kimi have jumped Kende, unless Kende is planning to go to the end on a set of hards. But with only 34 litres of fuel, I do not think that's the case. I think he's going to do a short stint on the hards to then go to one more stint on the softs. But our race leaders right now, Spider and Kimi, I think have now got this race win between the two of them, and I think Kende is now stuck in a third place situation, as Mostro right now is peacefully making his way around in P4, and Mostro really in the happiest place of all of our battlers for P4 in the fact that he hasn't been caught up in any battles, as we do see that S43 has made the move on Karma, and we're going to take a look back and see where that move was made. Well, it had to have been made into turn 12 surely, because Karma is a long way back. Perhaps there's a little bit of a latency issue. We didn't quite catch that overtake, unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, but Karma is now a second down on S43, as S43's internet connection does seem to have stabilised a little. Well, I say it stabilised a little bit, and then he decides to teleport his way through turn number 4, and I think that might be getting reported to the stewards afterwards by some of our drivers around him, none more so than Padge, of course, who I think received a little bit of a latency bump and is now trying to battle versus Sully. They're drag racing up the hill here, and Padge is side by side with Sully. The battle for P8 commences here, and Padge is on the inside through the final corner before the start finish line, but Sully is trying to come back here, and Sully is fighting for this position as much as humanly possible and will not want Padge to have an easy ride here, and Sully in the end has to back out of it, with Padge being stronger on the brakes into turn 1. That Aston Martin looking phenomenal on the brakes into turn 1 and turn 4 by comparison with the other cars here, but Padge right now will have to try and make up every second he's lost with that contact into turn 10, only a few laps to go. And really, it has been the story for Padge. It has been a story of mistakes or incidents and then having to recover from them. But you've got to give credit to the Hungarian driver. He is driving a phenomenal race. It's just not the one he will have wanted. Finding himself battling for P8, where right now he'd probably be thinking to himself, I should be up there in the battle for P4. But nonetheless, things continue, and we can see that Karma has dropped to 1.4 seconds behind S43 right now as they make their way onto lap 56. I think Karma deciding to just simply settle the car down and not go hunting that P5 position, as Mostro really has pulled the blinder on strategy here and is running in P4 right now. And I think if he nails this stint plus his final stint, Mostro could actually be our surprise P4 finisher of all the strategies playing out, and this will have caught everybody by surprise, as the V3R driver has done a fantastic job and has not got long left to go. But as we look around still, we can see that now Storm's 98 JDM is being reeled in by Padge, and Padge is reeling him in by a sizable amount each lap. That gap is 1.5 seconds and closing at a ferocious rate of knots, and we note that Padge is picking up the toe of our race leaders right now, and JDM will have to let them through, and he won't want to let them through here because it's going to cost him so much time and give Padge an opportunity to try and come through as well. He'll want to do it somewhere where he can lift out and then immediately get back onto that racing line. And if I was in JDM's shoes, you'd want to do it in the run uphill into turn 6 perhaps, because you're bound to start breaking. He comes off the racing line down the Reproposta here, lets P1 and P2 through, but this is going to cost him so much time here into turn number 4. You can see that Padge was trying to go for a move, a cheeky move to the outside, but JDM covered it off, but the damage has been done by letting the race leaders through, and Padge now is all over the back of JDM, and I think he's going to go for the move into turn 6 and go into the corner. Padge on the inside, JDM on the outside here, and Padge continues that momentum, gives JDM the space, but Padge surely has got this on the brakes because the Ford GT does not have the brakes of that Aston Martin, and Padge is up into P7. The Hungarian driver rises from the ashes once again. The Hungarian Phoenix is charging right now and is trying to ascend to the heavens, but to do so, it's got a lot more places and time to make up, and Padge will know that. He will be literally trying to match the race pace of the leaders right now. He can't unlap himself behind them, of course, unless they're running that slow, but he will try and stay in the slipstream and use that to break away from the Ford GT of JDM, who is still there behind him, it should be pointed out. Let's not forget JDM right now. If Padge can down the next couple of laps and stay with the leaders, this is going to give him a huge advantage going into the final stint versus the guys battling with him for P4. What would that be? Mostro, S43 and Karma, as Padge goes to unlap himself, in fact, on our race leaders right now. And you can see as he lets himself through here, I think Spider and Kimmy let him through. And now Storm's JDM will want a way through as well. But this is very frustrating for JDM because he's only just let those two through. And now they've let him back through. In terms they've let Padge through, and he'll be thinking, hey guys, where's my free pass? I want to chase after P7. I don't want to be stuck behind you guys. But still, if JDM hasn't got the pace in the eyes of Kimmy and Spider, then they won't let him through, and he have to force his way through if he really thinks that. As we can see that GTWGP's Sully is catching up to JDM now quite gradually, but that gap has come down with all the fighting and lapping shenanigans, and Sully 2.3 seconds down right now on JDM, and has still got a half an hour to go to potentially pick up that P8 if not higher. But whilst we have got a breather, folks, we've now got 30 minutes around. We've got a yellow flag somewhere. Somebody has gone off. We've got a driver off. What has happened here, ladies and gentlemen? It looks as though we've got Jordan off at turn 9 into turn 10. Let's see what happened for the KCF driver. So making his way up in towards what was turn 8. He got a clean run out of turn 8 and then into turn 9 here. Does he bounce off of the exit curb here of turn 9? He does indeed. He goes off the curb and into the gravel and hits the wall, and that is heavy damage to the car, and he will need to pit that vehicle because it's got engine damage plus front left axle damage, and he'll need to get it in very rapid order. As we can see that Karma is in the pits right now, our driver who was at the time in P6 coming into the pits and will be coming out in P6, and I believe this will be to take him to the end of the race on those racing softs, unless he's got one more stint in the bag. Well, we're going to quickly take a breather, folks, and then we'll let you know the update on all of our drivers with only half an hour to go. Well, 29 minutes as it currently stands. So to give you the quick recap, with half an hour to go then, ladies and gentlemen, our race leader right now is R8G's Spider in the Jaguar F-Type, ahead of Kimmy from GTS-BOCA. Kimmy literally attached to the rear of Spider's car by the window of 0.2 of a second. These two have been running around together all race, literally working in harmony to fuel save and tyre save on one another and extend the stints as much as possible. In P3, the driver who is 10.5 seconds back right now, but is still due for another pit stop potentially. He's running on the racing hard right now, so his next stop, I assume, will be a racing soft to go to the end, is Kende from IGTSH. when the Aston Martin V12 has been on an offset sprint strategy versus Spider and Kimi's longer strategies. We then got a 19.7 second gap to V3R's Mostro, who's making his way into turn 8 right now. These drivers being on lap 59, of course, our lead lap. The Supra driver having cleared the battle for P4 and holding on to P4 right now by a window of 9.4 seconds ahead of S43. From RP Motorsport, who has been caught up in some difficult battles, and I think RP Motorsport right now will be happy with the results in their driver, but of course S43 will want that P4 if he can get it, and he is 38.9 seconds ahead of KCF Karma, who has only just recently pitted and makes his way in the chase after P5 if not P4, the Chevrolet driver having been in the battle for P4 for the best part of an hour now. We then got IGTSH's Padge, who in P7, the Hungarian driver, due for I think at least one more pit stop before the end of the race, and really has been the driver who's had it all to do. Well, the fact he cleared his tyres early on, but he only did one lap on each of the mandatory compounds, had an off, and has also had some unfortunate incidents, but is now charging after the race for P5 if not P4. And then we've got a 3.7 second window back to JDM from Storm, our second 4GT driver, who is in that position right now where he can't go chasing after Padge because he's got the race leaders literally in front of him and is instead using them to fuel save and be pulled along on the straights, although the 4GT doesn't need that much pulling along. It's a 4-second window to P9, Sully for GTS-BOCA. The Chevrolet driver gradually closing in JDM and has been in a battle with JDM for P8 over the course of the entirety of the race. And then we've got a 20.3 second window to V3R's Jester in P10 right now, making his way around the second of our Supra drivers, having had a quiet race, as had GTS-BOCA's JB Sub in P11, 11.7 seconds down on Jester. And I believe with KCF Jordan right now, the car is in the pits, they've repaired the damage, and they'll be released the car. If not, it may be a retirement because this car is being held in the pits. No, they've done the repairs. It is being released. It's not a retirement. They've had to do a lot of repair work to the car, but the team have got it back out there. But Jordan down in last place and almost a lap down, I believe, on the majority of the field. So that's really how it currently stands with 26 minutes to go. And for those who are still with us since the start, glad to have you here. And those who've tuned in recently, it's good to have you here as well. We're at Interlagos, of course. On lap 61 now is Spider and Kimi as they lead us onto that lap. And it really is a case right now of our two leaders. Who is going to be the winner here? Who is going to try and make that break? We know they are due one final pit stop. They're coming to the end of their current stint. And I think it'll be the case that Spider or Kimi will try and make a break for one another as Mostro comes into the pits for his final pit stop. Now, this is a critical pit stop for Mostro, because wherever he comes out here, this will be his track position and he will need to try and gain on S43, Karma and Padge as much as possible, as S43 is going through the Cedroses right now, but S43 is due one more pit stop, so Mostro is the first of our battlers for P4 to pit for their final stint, and Karma is making his way through turn 12 right now. He's quite a way back, of course, 45 seconds is the gap. And I think Karma is on his final stint to the end, or he's going to go for a very short stint right at the end. But I suspect Karma is on his final stint, so he's going to try and close Mostro down as much as possible right now. But Mostro is already starting to come out of the pit, so Karma has been cleared by Mostro. Mostro is in P5 right now, and I think he has got this. He has got this P4, unless there is any surprises, any incidents for Mostro. He just needs to bring it home right now, because S43 is only 32 seconds up the road, and that Ford GT has to pit one more time, whereas Mostro does not have to pit. He's put the fuel in to go to the end, and Karma, if he stretches that stint, will go to the end. Otherwise he may be doing another pit stop as Kende comes into the pits for what was P3, 11 seconds down on our leaders, and we go into his final stint on a set of racing softs. Meanwhile, GTS-BOCA's Sully is coming into the pits from P9, undercutting JDM once again. A 5-second gap that he's trying to undercut here, going on to his final stint, and I reckon JDM will react in a very short period of time. Well, the fact JDM's probably got 4 more laps to go before coming to the end of that stint. Kende right now, well, Kende in P4, he'll be coming out of the pits, I suspect, in P3, although he'll be fueling the car up to the end. In fact, S43 may have got ahead of Kende here through the pit stop as Kende goes to that set of soft tyres and puts the fuel in the car to go to the end. But S43 is due a pit stop at the end of this lap, so that's going to be a trivial matter of fact. And Kende going to a set of mediums. Well, he's already done one stint on the mediums. He doesn't feel confident to go on the softs all the way to the end, so this is a shock surprise here, and that means he is going to be vulnerable in terms of pace at the end on the medium, because he is effectively about 0.8 to 1 second a lap slower than the soft, and we reckon our Jaguar drivers here have got a little bit of a pace advantage over Kende by default. But the fact they'll make the soft go longer, of course, they'll need to manage it, but this is going to be all to play for, because they will be pitting in response very shortly. And Kende, right now, well, he is a long way down the circuit. This has not worked out for Kende at all. He is 52 seconds down the road from Kimi and Spider, who are going to be going to the end very shortly. So I think Kende is out of the running for the race win right now. We will find out for you, of course, as soon as we can, ladies and gentlemen, but this is a shock surprise. We did not expect it to end up like this. As we can see, all of our drivers making their way around the circuit, with S43 now about to come into the pits, we believe, for what is his final pit stop, and this will release Kende back into P3, and this will release Mostro back into P5. As we'll wait and see, as S43 makes his way down the start-finish straight here and into the pits he comes for his mandated pit stop, as it will be that Mostro right now coming out of turn 10, 30 seconds down on... Pardon me, 30 seconds down on our race leaders, of course, but he was much less down in terms of well, he was 30 seconds down, I should say, on S43. That's the timing screen's glitching out for me there. And he is now the best part of 70 seconds down on Kende. Well, he will not be able to gain on Kende because Kende is going to the end, albeit he may close up a little bit of time. But we can see that our race leaders right now, well, Kimi has come out of the pits 1.4 seconds ahead of Spider. He has had it on the fuel by comparison with Spider here. Now, this is where Kimi needs to go for the break. If he wants the race win, he needs to maintain that gap and force Spider to use more fuel. Spider has also got a back marker he needs to clear, but already Spider will be gaining because of the slipstream of the back marker as S43 is coming out of the pits. And he can see Mostro is well ahead of him. That's about a 10-second gap at least to Mostro, who is in P4 as a result. So Mostro has done it right now, ladies and gentlemen, with 21 minutes to go. And Mostro is on for P4. So long as he doesn't make any mistakes. And KCF Karma is in P5, so S43 has lost out not just P4 but also P5. And now it is the case, can S43 close up the gap to the two drivers ahead of him and get P4 and be the best of the rest? One of our top three being so strong throughout this race. Excuse me. Very sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. Just needed a brief bit of liquid refreshment very quickly. But we can see right now in terms of the overall pace, well, Spider has already caught up a little bit to Kimi as he's cleared Sully through the blue flag situation, but Kimi trying to keep that gap beyond 0.75 seconds, and Kimi will have the slipstream of JB Sub going down the Reproposta here towards turn number 4 on the 6th time of asking, flashing his lights. Kimi knows he needs drivers to get out of his way here. But I think Spider may just have a little bit of a pace advantage, which Kimi does not have the ability to, pardon me, usurp, because of the fact Spider is closing up rapidly and he's almost into that slipstream zone. So Spider coming back at Kimi, he's in that slipstream zone. So Kimi right now in a situation where he can't make the break and instead will have to try and find another way to hold off the creepy crawly Spider from R8G, whereby the Frenchman chasing after his fellow countryman is really on a charge right now. And looking further around the field, we can see that Page, who is due for one more pit stop in P7, I think he will be out of the running for a potential top 5 finish. I think in the end, he'll be looking at a potential P8 maximum, although I say that he could be P7 with JDM due for a pit stop sometime soon. And we do know that Sully right now, having pitted quite recently in that battle with JDM, the gap is 40 seconds between the two of them, and we'll be trying to bring that gap down as much as possible for the undercut. But remember, with JDM coming into the pits soon, he'll need to take in less fuel compared to Sully, and that could work out in JDM's favour. But meanwhile, up front, we can see that Kimi is gradually being closed up by Spider right now. Now, from Spider's perspective, will he go for a move early, or will he decide to fuel safe behind Kimi for the time being and then go for the overtake and the breakaway in, say, the remaining 10 minutes or the remaining 5 minutes? If I was in Spider's shoes, well, if I feel that I've got enough fuel to get me to the end without needing to revert to major fuel saving, then I'd go for the break, as he's getting ever closer, Spider, to the back of Kimi's car. They're charging down towards turn 4. Kimi goes defensive. In fact, he lifts out of it and tucks in behind Spider. He doesn't go for a full defense into 4, and I think Kimi's going to try and fuel safe behind Spider and be pulled along here and give himself an advantage right at the end. But surely Spider will have calculated this or realised this was coming. There's mind games going on between these two. Of course, they're racing for the same manufacturer here, and there will be valuable points for the manufacturer. But overall, of course, they'll both want that win after 2 hours, and who is going to be on the top step of that podium? We haven't got long, and we'll find out soon as it all continues, and it will be coming down to the last couple of laps, I reckon, as JDM comes into the pits here from what was at the time P8. And Sully, of course, meanwhile making their way out of turn 10. A long way back is Sully right now and was gradually closing up to JDM. JDM will go on to another set of softs, and Sully is on a current set of softs as well. But I think JDM, who's already having the tyres changed right now, he's pulled into his pit box, and we know that Sully is currently coming out of turn 12 and onto the start-finish straight. It's a long run, of course, and I think JDM will have done enough here because Sully is only coming through the second to last banking for the start-finish straight right now, and JDM surely will have enough fuel in that car come at the time that Sully comes across our timing line here. Or will it be the case? Well, JDM is now coming out the pits and Sully is just breaking into turn 1 as JB Sub comes into the pits from what was at the time P10 and will be coming back out, I think, in P10 or P11. But I think JDM has done it, unless we're mistaken here. It's going to be very close, in fact, as Sully comes out. But I think he's going to see JDM on his left-hand side just ahead of JDM, staying to the inside immediately, not tucking onto the racing line, going defensive into turn 4. The battle resumes between these two, and now it is a battle to the end between the Ford GT and the Chevrolet C7. Sully, of course, in the Chevrolet, JDM in the Ford GT, and now it is going to be a mother of all battles between these two because the strategy is out the window. Of course, do keep in mind that Sully is on slightly worn tyres by comparison with JDM, but they've both got the fuel to go to the end. Who is going to prevail as we see that Padge is coming into the pits from P7 and has cleared these drivers, I believe, as he's in the pits right now, and these two are just making their way up into turn 10 as we currently speak. So Padge, I think, will be settling for P7 tonight, having to make that recovery drive, but JDM right now will need to try and break away from Sully. He's got a good run out of turn 10, mind you, and now running down towards Junkow at turn 12 here, we can see that JDM will use that throttle power from the Ford GT on the uphill section, although that Chevrolet is very strong uphill as well, and I think JDM, it will start to be reeled in a little bit by Sully with the slipstream here as they both charge down the start finish straight here down towards lap number 66 in turn 1 once again. But now that Ford GT is opening it up, of course, and JDM, this is where the gap starts to stay open as Sully can't necessarily reel it in as they make their way into turn 1. Padge coming out the pits right now and makes his way back into P7 further up the road, and we'll keep our eyes on the battle between JDM and Sully, of course, for you, ladies and gentlemen, as Kimi right now ahead of Spider by a small margin here. And Kimi has been let through by Spider. Spider was ahead, remember, a little bit early on. These two changing places, and I think this is just as much tactics and mind games as it is actual battling right now. The real battle is in the mind, and it will be out on track that the battle kicks off probably within the final 5 minutes as these two are pushing one another as much as possible. Of course, they don't own the fastest lap. The fastest lap is owned by this man here, S43 from RP Motorsport, the Ford GT driver, who is currently making his way chasing after KCF Karma. That gap has come down to 4.2 seconds. And to give you an idea of the lap times on the previous lap, S43 was a 1:30.507, whereas KCF Karma on the more worn tyres in P5 and that Chevrolet at 1:31.3. So Karma is definitely losing some pace versus S43, and he's also reeling in Mostro right now. Mostro is being caught up, so it is all going to come together between the three drivers. We know that Mostro is having to essentially get the super home very gradually, having just got past his teammate, unlapping his teammate, and he'll be hoping, of course, Mostro, that his teammate will hold up the guys behind yesterday in the rear of your camera shot, but in the second to rear of the camera shot now, as we can see that Karma and S43 also creeping into the camera. So this is how close it's getting for P4. And Mostro just needs to hold on. There's only a few more laps to go. We expect it's going to be the best part of another 10 laps before the race is complete, and by the end of this it could all change, of course. Kende, meanwhile, who is 16.8 seconds up the road from Mostro. Well, Kende is on a set of racing mediums right now and using those to go to the end. Didn't feel comfortable to go to the end of set of softs as Spider and Kimi change places once again into turn number 4. This has become a recurring thing. The two of them fuel saving off of one another and saying, no, you first. Well, no, you first, sir. Well, both of them will want to go through the corner together come the end of it as Karma comes into the pits on 2% fuel. Karma really using a lot of fuel there, and I think Karma just not able to get the fuel nailed in that car, and that is very unfortunate for the Chevrolet driver because that takes him out of the running for P4 and actually puts him in a position where he may be vulnerable to Padge for P6 by the end of it. Of course, Karma will be on fresh tyres and a full tank of fuel at that point, so surely he'll have enough to go to the end. But the Chevrolet driver not able to make the car go long as Mostro goes a little bit wide there at turn 4, but isn't pulled off circuit. But the gap between himself and S43 at 6.1 seconds is the gap, and S43 will be aware of that and will want to close it down as much as possible as as Karma, coming out of the pits right now, will come back out ahead of Padge by a good margin. I reckon that margin is going to be at least the best window of 20 seconds, and Karma will now have enough fuel to go to the end of the race. Very unfortunate for the French driver. We thought he was on for a potential P4, but in the end it's going to be a P6 come the end of this race. Of course, if nobody ahead of him makes any mistakes, well, there's not any major battles, but anything can happen before the curtain falls. As Mostro is being caught up a little bit right now, the gap dropping down to 5.7 seconds. Mostro losing 4 attempts in Sector 2 alone versus S43, and this seems to be where S43 is very strong versus the Supra, is in Sectors 2 and 3 by comparison with what Mostro is able to achieve. But of course, Mostro right now may be nursing the car a little bit, just simply protecting the tyres and affording himself the comfort of losing a couple of attempts to have fresher tyres at the end. We might need to battle or put in a very strong lap to make sure S43 can't fully close that gap up. But anything could happen against these two right now, as we see that Spider and Kimi very close to the circuit, as they have always been, to be fair, and neither driver right now really trying to make that breakaway. But it is going to happen at some point, I reckon, unless they're deciding to come across the line in formation, the Jaguar formation finishing together, which of course would be something for the photographers to take a good look at. But it really has been close between these two all the way through, and well, there's nothing else to say right now other than they've been inseparable, and we wait to see what else can happen with only 12 minutes to go between the pair. As we look further around once again, we can see Kende in P3 right now, not able to close up to our race leaders. Those mediums not offering him the pace that he desires to close up, but he has got a comfortable gap to P4. So I think Kende will be settling for the bottom step of the podium tonight, which of course the IGTSH community will be very happy with Kende's performance, but he himself I think will feel that he had an opportunity to get the race win, but in the end he just didn't have the strategy nor the pace to quite get it done. But it's been a very nice effort from the Hungarian driver, and it'll give him good momentum going into round 3 next week. Mostro in P4, well, he's been reeled in by S43. That gap is actually being reeled in quite sizably. It's come down by the region of 6 tenths over the course of lap 69. And as he makes his way across the timeline very shortly to commence lap 70, I think there could be one more spin in the tail here for Mostro. I think we could be spinning one more yarn here, because S43 is really bearing down right now and going full attack mode. But look at the tyres on S43's car by comparison with Mostro's. And remember, Mostro has been on his tyres a lot longer than S43, and 43 is ripping life out of the tyres in that Ford GT. He is going at full attack right now. You can see it with how late he's upshifting as well. S43 is going for the full attack mode, and that's why he's closing it down. But of course, as he puts in more laps and those tyres get more heavily worn, that's where he'll start to lose the time. So I think S43 is going up against a declining car right now, whereas Mostro has got the car advantage as he goes deeper into this stint. He will have the fresher tyres and also the better fuel consumption and efficiency. As we can see that Kimi has lost out a little bit versus Spider. The break is beginning, ladies and gentlemen, with 10 minutes to go. We can see that Spider has almost broken clear in terms of that slipstream. The gap is 7 tenths as they come across the timing line onto lap 71. And I think now Spider is really starting to go for it as we see them come down to the braking zone for turn 1, and that's the full attack moment. But we note that under braking, Kimi closed up a little bit, but then Spider pulls away a little bit more into turn 2. They charge through turn 3 through the ZRS as they go, and again these two have been so inseparable all the way through. But it is Kimi now who's got to go chasing after Spider. Spider is no longer matching pace with Kimi. He's trying to break away, it would seem. And we can tell that because on the previous lap it was a 130.8 from Spider, whereas from Kimi, as they make their way out of turn 4 and 5, from Kimi's perspective it was a 131.2. And as they come through turn 6 and 7 here, Spider has broken the gap a little bit, but we'll wait to see under braking. Of course, Kimi may go full attack here to close it up through turn 8, 9 and 10. This is where he can potentially close it up, of course, but Spider has got that window open just a little bit. It's 8 tenths right now. I think Spider is managing that gap, and I think he may have just cleared it a little bit and has just eked out enough with 9.5 minutes to go as they come through turn 11 to 12. We'll know come the end of the start-finish straight here whether Kimi has got it all to do to close the gap back up and get back in that slipstream. As they make their way out of the final main corner, then you can see that Spider has opened that gap up to a second. So it is a case that Spider is now making the breakaway with those 10.5 minutes to go. Spider is the man on a mission, flashing his lights as he makes his way along the start-finish line here towards turn number 1 once again. And I think he's trying to send the signal to Kimi right now. I'm running for this. Catch me if you can, as he comes into the braking zone for turn number 1 for the 72nd time of asking. As we look at the telemetry, we can see that Kimi has got less fuel than Spider, but they're quite equal in tyre wear as well. So what it means is Kimi has now got to use up a lot of fuel, and that gap has opened up to 1.5 seconds in the space of sector 1 alone. I think Kimi has realised he's now got to try and dig deep and find a way back into the fight, because that gap has opened up and it is creeping out. And Kende is still falling backwards from that battle for the lead right now, as we see that Mostro has lost another second to S43 over the last 2 laps. But I don't think he'll be too worried about this, because he will be thinking to himself right now that he's got the car that works better deeper in the stint versus S43's Ford GT. That's Supra having the longevity over the stints. And the Frenchman right now will feel comfortable. He can let that gap keep creeping down, we should say, as it opens up by a tenth at the end of sector 1. And S43, I think, is starting to hit a little bit of a cliff in terms of tyre life performance as we look further around the field. And Karma right now 31.2 seconds down on P5, and I think he's going to be settling for P6 here as we look up ahead. And we see that Padge right now in P7 trying to chase down Karma, but he's got an 18.1 second window of close down. I do not think it's going to be possible unless there's a mistake from Karma. JDM 9.1 seconds down on these guys, of course, and I believe that JDM is running to the end of the race right now, as we see that Jester is up into P9 and Spider, hold on a second, Spider into the pits. What has happened here? Well, there's been no damage or anything, but he's into the pits. And is this... where on earth does this come from? Because surely, no, this can't be the case that Spider's missed a mandatory stint. We saw the mediums, we saw the hards, but there's only 7 minutes to go, and this is going to release Kimi, and this is also potentially going to release Kende. Unless Spider is going for fastest lap, or feels that actually, well, he's going to a fresh set of tyres now. And is this to try and put pressure on Kimi in the fact that he's going to be on such heavily worn tyres? But the gap between the two of them is going to be absolutely huge. And it means that now, as Spider comes out of the pits here, we're going to see that he's going to be coming out in P3 very shortly, and he's going to be 6.2 seconds down on Kende, and then he's a further, what is effectively 18 seconds down on Kimi. I'm not sure about this one, ladies and gentlemen. Has Kende pulled the magical strategy here, or has Spider pitted and realised it was a bridge too far to go on those tyres? Because if we look at Kimi's tyres right now, they're in a reasonable condition. He's got the fuel to go to the end, as has Spider, because Spider didn't put any fuel in. Or is Spider going for the fastest lap here to get some bonus points, and he feels it's worth just as much as picking up the win? I'm not sure what's going on here, folks, as we can see that Kende right now will need to literally drive for his life to hold off Spider, who is 5.6 seconds down, and will reel him in by a second a lap, of course. But there's only the best part of 4 laps to go for these two drives, so Kende, I think, will have enough. Unless Spider pulls something magical out in terms of fastest laps, Spider will need to set qualifying laps from here to the very end. But that is a real surprise right now, as another surprise as well is that S43 has closed up another 5 attempts to Mostro, and we see the battle for P9 right now, Jester versus Sully, and Jester under a lot of pressure versus Sully, going long right now, and Sully on fresher tyres, it would seem, and battling with Jester. And as they make their way out of turn 12 and up the hill, this is where the Corvette really shines. It's got so much torque in the low gear range for the uphill sections, and Sully can't find a way through immediately, but in that slipstream, and will look to the inside into the final banking before coming across the timing line. They go across the start-finish line onto lap 73, these two, and it will be Jester on the outside, Sully on the inside into turn 1, Sully on the brakes, of course, and I think Sully has got the job done as the camera pans around here, and Sully up into P9, and he's got past Jester, and I think Sully has got the fresher tyres. Indeed, Sully has only just recently pitted, so that explains why they dropped down, although they've got a long gap to JDM here, and I think JDM has done enough to get to the end with only a couple more laps remaining for the Frenchman. I think JDM has held off the battle for P8, and Sully will be sticking with a P9 when all is said and done. But meanwhile, up front, we can see that Kimi in that comfortable lead of 18 seconds versus Kende, where Kende is being reeled in by a huge margin, a lap by Spider. Spider has already stripped 2.5 seconds out of Kende over the course of one lap alone, and by the end of this lap, we're going to be expecting a magical lap. That gap is coming down like wildfire right now for Spider, and I think Spider's going to be within striking distance by the end of lap 75. This is a phenomenal charge from Spider, albeit from an unexpected pit stop, mind you, ladies and gentlemen, but he is getting closer. The Spider is getting closer and closer and charging after its prey, and this time the Frenchman's prey is Kende as he makes his way onto lap 75. Spider sets the fastest lap at 1:29.5, which compared to Kende's lap, ladies and gentlemen, to give you an idea, Kende was a 1:31.8. That's 2.3 seconds faster for Spider, and Spider is just on a mission right now and ripping time out of everyone, literally like nobody's business. But of course, he'll be able to get past Kende, I think, in short order, unless Kende goes incredibly fighty, but then he won't have the tyres to go to the end. But what about Kimi? Will Kimi be going to the end here, or will he pit? I think Kimi's going to go to the end, as we can see that S43 right now feels as though he's being held, but he's holding up Sully. Although there's contact between the two drivers here, and a major incident ensues where S43 essentially collided with collided, and I'm not sure what happened there as Sully tried to unlap himself. Let's take a look back at that. So as we ride on board here with S43, you're going to see Sully's going to come down the left-hand side here. And S43, I think with a little bit of lag, had a massive amount of latency contact, and that caused the car to jump. And Sully just trying to unlap themselves there, where all went horribly wrong, but finally got the car back under control. Now, that was a major surprise. But as we look around, we can see that Kende has been closed in by Spider. And as they come out of turn 12 here, surely Kende's got nothing left in the tank. He's going to have to let Spider back through, because he's on the outside on the start-finish straight run already, and Spider has got so much momentum in that Jaguar. Fresher tyres as well, unless Kende can find some sort of magical lunge into turn 1. But those mediums are gone by comparison to Spider's softs, and as they make their way into turn 1, Kende has to settle for that P3 position so far. But will he come back out of turn 3 and in the run from Aposta to turn 4? I mean, I don't think so, folks. I think Spider will just be able to break away here, as well as Kende will have the slipstream. He just doesn't have the momentum. So Spider up into P2 with 2 minutes to go. And that means really now it's the case of hunting down Kimi. But Kimi has got the fuel to go to the end. He's got enough tyre life that he can afford to back off the car massively here and not worry. I think Kimi has got this in the bag, although I'm very curious as to why Spider backed out. But perhaps it was to go for that fastest lap. Who knows? Or perhaps Spider sensed something was happening and decided to go for a safety stop there. But it's cost him the win, I reckon, as we see Mostra in P4 right now has broken away from S43 even more after the incident between Sully and S43 on the previous lap, which I think will be treated as a racing incident. What are the amount of latency issues that we did see from S43 as Jester now tries to unlap himself from S43, and S43 with the damage on the car there with that incident as well, having to nurse the car home. He's got a comfortable gap of 23.5 seconds versus Karma, so I think he's going to let the driver unlap himself of Jester and just simply carry on his way home in P5, which will be a good result for S43, a top 5 finish, particularly after the disaster of Catalonia. Meanwhile, Karma in P6, well, it has not been the greatest of races for Karma, and he's really suffered in terms of fuel in the strategy games, and I think Karma will be looking to bounce back in round number 3 next week. Padge, meanwhile, not able to close up to Karma and will be coming home in P7 at this rate, as we can see that JDM 33.2 seconds clear of Sully, and Sully in P9 has broken away from Jester, meaning they're going to hold on to that P9 with Jester in P10, and KCF Jordan a lap down on everyone, I believe, and the last of our runners right now. We have got 30 seconds to go before we call time, and everybody will be expected to finish the lap they're currently on. But right now, making his way home is Kimi, and making his way up towards turn 10. I think Kimi really has been the story of tonight. We've always had that surprise of Spider, of course, but Kimi has run it all the way with Spider. And as he makes his way out towards turn 12, we are going to have a driver come across the line to complete their race just before Kimi, and that will be Padge, I believe. Padge will come home at the end of lap 76 in 7th place as his race comes to the end, making his way around the final banking. Congratulations to the Hungarian driver from IGTSH for a brilliant recovery driving the into P7. But our race winner, ladies and gentlemen, representing Jaguar, GTS-BOCA's Kimi, coming home in first place, 14 seconds clear of R8G's Spider, as we can see a number of drivers coming across the line here. It will be Storm JDM in P8, it will be KCF Jordan in P12, but second place going to R8G's Spider from France in the Jaguar F-Type, and then Kende, who couldn't quite get himself further up the podium, but coming home in P3, a valiant effort from the Hungarian driver from IGTSH, and a third place well deserved. And then fourth place, who would have thought of it, ladies and gentlemen, going to V3R's Mostro, a brilliant strategic drive from the Toyota Supra driver. The Frenchman comes across the line in what has been a hard fought fourth place and finishing ahead of the drivers around him, as we see that we do have somebody coming across the line right now. We're going to have V3R's Jester coming home in P10, and fifth place will go to S43, who held on to P5 in the end despite it all. A difficult night for S43, but a better one than what he's been used to be fair, as we hear that Sully has come across the line in P9 for GWP, and then it'll be KCF Karma, who couldn't quite make the strategy work to stay on fuel, but coming home in P6, spinning it across the line there. And then I believe that is everyone complete. Congratulations to all of our drivers, but to our race winner, Kimi from GTS-BOCA. Well, what a brilliant drive from all of our drivers tonight. Of course, congratulations to all of them for making it to the end of the race. That's what it's all about, staying in it to the very end. But here are your race results, subject to any stewards' inquiries, of course. GTS-BOCA's Kimi, representing Jaguar, bringing home the win 14.5 seconds ahead of fellow Jaguar driver from R8G, Spider, who in the end beat Kende to the second step of the podium. Kende from IGTSH, representing Aston Martin in the V12 Vantage GT3, finishing in P3, 20.2 seconds down on our race leader. Fourth place going to V3R's Mostro in the Toyota Supra Racing Concept, 37.9 seconds down our leader, and our top five being rounded out by RP Motorsport S43 in the Ford GT, representing the American manufacturer, the French driver, 50.9 seconds down on our race winner. And the fastest lap going to R8G's Spider in the Jaguar on lap 77 of 129.448. A fantastic drive by all of our drivers, and congratulations to all of them, of course. As we say, congratulations to all of them. But what a brilliant drive from everyone tonight, and really a great round two Lobby C. We were wondering how the battle was going to play out in the end, and I'd be interested to know what happened with Spider and why he pitted when he was in that fight with Kimi right at the end there. But still, I think that's something we'll find out a little bit later on at post-race debrief. But that does mark the conclusion of round number 2, Pool C, for our quarterfinals in the Binome Manufacturers Endurance Elite Cup. I've been your host, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Brit in a Spit. And whilst we do not have time to do post-race interviews tonight, it's been a pleasure to bring this to you. And until next time, next week, round number 3 comes about, we wish you all the best. And remember to stay well, stay safe, stay smiling, but most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.